Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could take sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got?
Let me know if that's too loud or too quiet. I think it's probably about right for you guys. A little loud on my end, but it's like the intro music. We're about to have discussions.
A Major League Baseball player and a guy I've been following and speaking to for a while.
Now my levels are fine.
One of the most exciting players that entered into the major leagues, but I want to properly introduce him to you in a way to see how you would feel about this. So imagine you're in high school and you have a 4.8 GPA. Okay, let's just assume you got a 4.8 GPA. And because of your grades, you can go to UCLA early to pitch and to go to school. You're 17 years old.
I've listened to this interview, most of it at least, and I think he does a really good job. That's kind of why I picked it.
You can go second. You ask the Mariners for $20 million. They say no. You go to the Diamondbacks for $7.3 million. You get pick number 3. You come into the major leagues right off the bat. You're doing your thing. You're trying to figure yourself out. You're young. You're a little bit of a rebel. You're in the new era, social media, content creation. Maybe
I do think he should get a second chance.
Think about like a younger,
I guess that could be. I guess that could be a.
Right? And what does Connor do?
That could be an interesting thing to discuss right away. Is like going in before this conversation. Do you believe he deserves a second chance or not? And then see if going through this stuff, if he kind of changes your mind or makes you aware of things that you're not aware of. So, because Tight Spot in chat asked if I believe he should get a second chance. I've always been in the ballpark of wait and see, like go through the court case, go through the investigation, do whatever. But like I put in the bottom line, all right, dude was charged, found not guilty. He didn't like accept one of those out of court plea deals or out of court like money, financial. No, like he didn't pay her any money. He didn't get a restraining order. There was no plea bargain. They basically just said like, all right, let's like agree to drop this because nothing's. Like it wasn't doing anything but hurting her, and it was kind of his name still being dragged through the mud. He couldn't say anything, so he almost had like a gag order. But like he's found not guilty of anything, and some of the evidence that you're gonna see and some of the things that he's about to say, like it's no different than me basically being like throwing out crazy accusations and like everyone just seems to believe it, Due to that, people create shit, not the person being blamed, but the ass that makes it up to make people hate people more. I think you'd have to have like a better situation. In terms of some of these women that throw out these accusations to either extort players for money or ruin their careers, it does happen. It does. But I feel like I don't think it's necessarily all just like them being like evil or whatever or manipulative. I think it's always like kind of like money based, or at least I think that's where it starts. Some of it might end up being manipulative, but
he draws all these eyeballs, making one of the greatest fights of all time with him and Mayweather, and he's making $100 million. I believe Mayweather made $300 million.
I also think him being very outspoken, he rubbed people like Manfred the wrong way, and maybe some of the owners the wrong way.
Rebel,
so they were happy to get rid of him.
You're in the playoffs, ALCS, maybe in game 1, you're messing around with your, the drone, and you're trying to fix it, and you're playing for this team called the Indians, and you cut your pinky of your pitching arm, right? And it's so bad that you're playing a game 2 of the
this was in the playoffs.
You can
a couple years ago
blood on your navy blue jersey, but you can't on your white pants, and no matter how much you try to, there's literally videos of the blood dripping to the point where the skipper on the other side had to come in and go to the ump and say, hey, man, we can't have blood. Look what's going on over there. So they come, they take him out, and coach is upset. It's like, what are you doing? It's a big moment. Sure, okay. Then, frustration, throws the pitch.
I guess a weird little side note on this thing, and I didn't know this back then. There's actually like a clotting agents that paramedics can use. I don't know if it's I can't remember if it's a powder or what it is, but it basically is like an instant clotter. So I'm surprised that there wasn't like a doctor or something around there that could have done something like that. I mean, obviously you can't just pull someone off that's pitching to like stitch up their finger or anything like that, but I always thought that was a weird situation.
pitch to the center field. Coach comes out. What the F are you doing? I'm so sorry. Gets taken out. Gets traded. Eventually goes to a team. He has a good.
But yeah,
season.
he's doing a little
I think he gets number 6 for Cy Young.
Little recap backstory.
I think this is Cincinnati. I don't know where you were at, but you thought
Ooh,
you were gonna
dang.
win it. You were number 6. Then he goes and gets the biggest contract in the history. By the way, at this time he's won the Cy Young. I think he ends up winning the Cy Young with the Dodgers.
I almost wonder if you would be allowed to like tape your fingers. Like it would mess with your spin rate, but you know.
With all this stuff that's going on. But again, I want you to think about this. All this stuff is going on. You know, he gets a contract, biggest in the history of Major League Baseball at the time. It's a 3-year contract for $102 million. Okay, 3 years, $102 million. You get a contract.
Yeah, he lost a lot of money.
He's 20.
Money we'll never earn in our life.
Now, which means 2020, he's late 20s. 29 years old, you're on top of the world. You just got a 9-figure check, okay? And, of course, you're having some fun. And, by the way, I'll put a little bit of Elon Musk in him as well because one time he said for 69 days straight he wants to give money to a charity of the fans' choosing. And you know how much money gives to the charity on a daily basis? $420.69 for 69 days straight. And on the 69th day,
A little bit of trolling.
he chose to give $69,420.69 to a charity.
Yeah, I don't mind that stuff.
So, yes, he is a troll. That's a bit of a Musk. That's a bit of a counter. But, again, if you know how to use a creative talent like this who's a troll and it's upsetting and closes one eye when he's pitching the ball and strikes the guy out, is screaming, is on the highlight. We all follow it, gets millions of views. We can't wait to see the next time they play. It's drawing an audience that the MLB doesn't yet have. It's getting exciting, right? And then all of a sudden, so again, at this point, you're on top of the world.
I'm gonna pause this because it's honestly he takes the like wrestling approach to it. It's like as a wrestler, you either want to get all the cheers or get all the boos, but you want some type of reaction, and that's kind of like the point that he's making. It's like whether they root for you or not, man, you're getting like fan interaction and fan attention, and that's what the sport needs.
Wherever you go to, they know who you are. They're talking about you every day on the news. You're being written about. You're on the papers. You can't keep track of all the magazines, sports magazines that are writing about you. Oh, you know you were quoted over here. Oh, you know you were over here. No shit, I can't track it anymore. You're at this point. Then all of a sudden, you get a lot of attention. Of course, a lot of girls are interested in you. Good-looking guy, tall, knows how to play loud, vocal, has strong opinions.
Braggadocious? Is that the word you're looking for?
He had plans of one point getting to 1 million followers on Twitter in no time. I mean, this is the kind of a guy that's competitive, right? So this girl is attracted to him, a girl named Lindsey Hill. She comes in, asks him, there's text and all this stuff that we'll talk about. There's a video, we'll show some of the text. And they start hanging out.
The text stuff is so damning.
A few months later, she comes out and accuses him of sexual assault. So now keep in mind.
Again, trigger
you're
warning.
A Major League Baseball player. You're playing for the Dodgers, a city like L.A. Girls are throwing their everything at you, right? Then he's like, wait a minute, what are we talking about here? The MLB jumps to conclusion. You know how many games they suspend him for? I want you to think about this. They suspend him for 324 games. Ends up being 194 games. 2 years later, Lindsey was lying. Texts were shown. Videos were shown. Calls were shown. And even the court said if we had this earlier 2 years before, this would have never happened. Nothing would have happened with this person. You know how much money Lindsey got? $300,000. You know from who? From an insurance company, not from Trevor Bauer. The reason why this is very important and why I wanted to have this conversation with Trevor is because there's a lot of other people in sports.
I actually didn't realize she got any money, but I guess, like he said, it was through an insurance thing, which I'm curious how that works. Like when this was all happening a couple years ago, it reminded me of a story that I think I was just out of high school. I think it was like 19 or 20 at the time. And it was a story that went out about this. It was like a D1 prospect player. He had a full ride scholarship to somewhere like Alabama, like so big time top tier athlete. And he had a scorn lover, ex-girlfriend or wherever that said that he had been raped and it was him. And so then they had to do the investigation, all this stuff. The school said, we can't, they pulled the scholarship, said they were done with him. I don't know how this happened, but whether it was him, I don't know. I don't really even want to know. But as the story goes, he gets convicted. He's sitting in jail. He's rotting in jail for rape that he never committed. And then eventually, I can't remember how many years it was. I want to say it was like 6, 7, 8 years later. The woman came out and said she lied. She made it up. And I don't think she ever got reprimanded for anything. Like, he eventually got out. I don't know if it was another trial or what, but she eventually admitted that it never happened, that she was just like a scorn and wanted to ruin his life because her life was never going to be like that. Well, he lost his prime years as an athlete, the chance to play D1 college sports, potentially go to the NFL, that's never guaranteed. But he lost all that time and was rotting in jail all because of a scorned woman. And so knowing that when I was like 19, anytime I hear these cases, I'm like, I don't know how he got convicted, because it sounds like it would be a bunch of like he said, she said, unless there was actually like a rape kit provided or something like that. But if he didn't do it, I'm like, how did they have evidence that said he did? Like, I don't remember the specifics of that case. But ever since that case happened and I read about it, I've always had, whenever these things pop up, I'm like, all right, I know it's dramatic. Things happen. These are sensitive subjects, so it riles up a lot of emotions. But everyone today, and I don't know if it's social media or what, but it always seems like no matter what happens, the person is deemed guilty before anything comes out. Acquisitions equals guilty in our society these days. So anytime I hear these things, I'm always like, shit, if that's true, that's pretty horrible. But if it's not, the outcome's going to be severely bad and potentially career threatening. And as we're seeing kind of with Trevor Bauer, that's kind of what's happening. And now he's kind of getting blackballed.
Who have gone through this. And you just played in Japan. In Japan, his spin rate and his velocity rate was very comparable to the best season that he had.
Turn my phone volume off.
Major League Baseball. So it's not like, well, he can't pitch anymore. Well, no, he can't throw. No, he can't do this anymore. And it's at a point right now where he could probably play in the big leagues for another 7 years. But one girl cost him a few $100 million, and some of his best pitching years of his life.
Just a few $100 million.
Fans lost that. So with that being said, I wanted to properly introduce Trevor before we get into the story. Trevor, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I watch you guys all the time, so happy to be on set and watching on YouTube.
Well, we watched you for a long time.
This is actually the first thing I'd watched of his, but I liked the way that he hosted and
his family, they're big.
Kind of like tells it like it is, but it's in a respectful way.
3 decades, you sat right next to who's the big interviewer, Larry King, and right behind the pitch. So he would follow. And
from what I saw, he doesn't do just like baseball or sports. He does a bunch of different people.
There was this pitcher named Trevor Bauer. I said, I think Trevor DM'd me. Trevor DM'd me? Yeah. And I'm like, Instagram. I'm like, oh shit, we did. And I'm like, oh, we had this conversation together, and it led to a phone call and all this stuff. So I wanted to have Tom here because Tom's got a different perspective with baseball. And he is a guy that's, when it comes down to history, what's happened with sports, he knows a lot about it. So I wanted him to be here as well.
Welcome in, Tom.
Right now? How are you feeling right now?
I'm good. It's been a rough couple years, of course, but I think I've managed to get through it well enough and focused on the future. That's kind of been the saving grace, just trying to look towards the future and figure out what I can do to make the future better than the past. So, yeah, doing pretty good right now.
So what's the level of optimism of
Bill Sneeze coming?
You getting everything squared away with Lindsey, where the market now knows what happened there, for you to be able to go back on the mound and start pitching again?
I don't know. I'm hopeful, of course. I'm not the most optimistic person in general. I try to be a little bit more realistic, just in everything. So I realize that there's a lot of potential issues that a team would have in signing me publicly, like public relations wise. Pitching wise, like, I'm still one of the best guys in the world. I know I can go out there and perform at a top level. I played in Japan last year. My set a new all-time velocity record, threw harder than I ever have in my life. My average velocity was second highest in my career in any year. I had a really good year. Developed a new pitch. My arsenal is better than it ever has been. So I have no doubts on the field that I'm able to perform and compete. I'm just looking for an opportunity. So that's kind of where it's at. I'm hopeful, but not sure. We'll see how it plays out.
We saw the videos when you were in Japan.
If you don't follow, like, he's a big YouTube guy as well. Like, he has his own business and own channel, stuff like that. I've kind of followed him and his journey over there because I was curious how the fans would react, and I also was just curious how baseball was over there. And I think he explained it to me once, where, like, most major league teams, they have like their major league team in one city. Well, they have like 4 or 5 that are basically in the same city, so they're competing against one another for fans. So they have to provide more of a value when you actually come to the ballpark. So he had said something like, after every game, like, there's fireworks. After every game, there's a concert, and there's like a post show of the player of the game right afterwards. So he's like, it's like a bigger deal. It's kind of like going to like a concert. Like, there's constantly like dancing cheerleaders and, like, the rah 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 stuff. He's like, it's pretty exciting. And I saw it and I was like, wow, it kind of reminded me of, like, whenever you played like Little League All Stars and everyone was always going 100% riled up with excitement.
Japan, you were welcome. They loved you.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was like a solid reception. What was your experience playing in Japan?
Man, Japan was awesome. I could talk this entire podcast about Japan. The Bay Stars organization. So the team I played for there was the.
I hope I didn't just like repeat what he's about to say.
The Bay Stars, and they were extremely welcoming. I've actually known a couple people in their front office for a couple years now through going to Japan, trying to make content and help grow baseball in Japan and all that. But
probably is, actually, because I was like, this is the freshest thing of his I've seen.
The fan base was super welcoming. For people who haven't seen games in Japan, you can imagine like a European soccer game with the crowd chanting, and there's band playing the entire time and flags and all sorts of stuff. Sold out every single game. So for the people in the States, if you haven't been to a game over there, it's well worth it if you get the chance.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to go to.
They care a lot about baseball as a culture. Everyone loves it. It's like the #1 sport there, which is really cool to be a part of. Talent is very good. I think the talent is better than most people give it credit for. It kind of gets the reputation of being like a less than MLB league, and that was not my experience at all. I think that's not, that's when you look at the WBC and the results of the 5 WBCs, Japan's won 3 of them. So level of competition is very high. Different, of course, a lot of cultural differences in how the game's played and what's important, how the coaches interact with players. There's only 12 teams. There's 30 in the MLB, so there's a lot less data. Also, it's not really controlled by a central operating body. Each team is kind of individual. I saw a really interesting graph one time, actually, kind of like revenues in 1970. NPB in Japan actually generated more revenue than MLB, and since then MLB has like skyrocketed and NPB has stayed flat, and the reason for that is the 12 teams there are competing, and here MLB is like a collective. MLB owns all the rights to the TV. They can sell it as a package, so the national TV deals are there. They can drive ticket prices. It's
almost in a sense MLB. I mean, I get it in sports, but it's like, because I think NFL and all of them do it in the States, but it's almost like they bind together and make a monopoly, so then they can control their value collectively. Where, yeah, over there it's like each one's their own business. So it's like Pepsi's going against Coke. At least that's the way I understand it.
One central thing, where in Japan it's 12 teams competing for the fans' attention. So there's no national TV deals. They all have their local TV deals. It's all revenue's all based on in-person attendance. So they actually have to make the fan experience really good. So ticket prices are down, entertainment's up. Like the Bay Stars would launch fireworks after every single game, so it became a thing to like stay after the game and enjoy it. They'd have like pop stars come in and do concerts after a baseball game to try to drive fan engagement. So it was really fun. The people in Japan, like outside of baseball, just the people on the streets are so polite. At least my experience, so polite and welcoming. I had people coming up to me. I'd walk to the train station, like 20-minute walk. If less than 10 people came up and like shook my hand and wanted a picture or wanted to say hi or something, it was a slow day. So, but
he did have a lot of vlogs that I watched. He had like a person that was kind of like his assistant for a while, because he was like, how do I get to the ballpark? How do I read the directions? What do I need to know? And because it's all in another language. And so even going something as simple as like I need to go buy a glove or I need shoes that are my size. Like for whatever reason, like everything's a little bit different in sizing over there and smaller, I think. So like even simple stuff that like you or me would be like, all right, let's go to like Dick's Sporting Goods and buy some, socks for my, whatever event. Or, oh, I need some new cleats. All right, go here. He was like, where do you go? What are the brands you trust? Like, so it was actually really interesting. I mean, like if you've traveled overseas or, I mean, like states I feel like are pretty similar. The only thing is like, okay, maybe like you have your different gas stations, grocery stores, that sort of thing. But like if you've ever gone to another country, you know what I mean. Like it can be a little intimidating because you don't know all these brands and you've never seen them before. But it was like a really cool experience to kind of like live through him in that sense. And yeah, I did feel like a lot of the people there were very respectful and nice. It would just be like, oh, hello, how are you? How are you liking the country? Are you okay? Do you need any help? Like, and they were super cool.
In a very
You were Mr.
respectful
Baseball.
way.
You were
Yeah.
Tom Selleck is what you were.
Yeah.
You got a taste of that on what it was like there.
Yeah, it was cool. The whole experience was awesome.
Fantastic. Well, when I was following the story closely, we've reacted to it many times with, what was going on with Lindsey Hill. And we've seen her in interviews. I think she did a couple interviews where she was called out and it's like, shit. If you feel that way, if you
I have
only
not
knew
sing
me,
those.
If you gave me a chance to get to know me, like, no, we got to know you and we learned a lot about you. What was revealed?
If you get to know me, I'm a bitch.
From the Lindsey Hill case, that originally the way MLB immediately jumped on. It's like, no, you can't do this. This is not fair. Down to 324 million, 324 games, and then boom, now it's 193, whatever the number was, to where it's at today. What did MLB learn to realize this guy's innocent? You didn't do any of it. And then did they reach out, apologize? Has there been any conversations there about them wanting to speak with you about potentially what your career is going to look like in the future? Maybe we need you to go through XYZ therapy and meet with this. Has that conversation taken place?
That conversation hasn't taken place. I have spoken to the commissioner and deputy commissioner.
Face to face?
Face to face,
Okay.
I had a 20-minute conversation with Rob, and I wanted to just apologize for the things that I've said about him in the past, and just clear the air. Didn't get the sense that there was any, malice or anything like that. It was a pleasant conversation. Mostly, I mean,
That's good.
We talked a little bit about the state of baseball and growing it and stuff like that. So trying to, I want to be a positive for the game. I want to grow it. Baseball's given me a lot. Despite the last couple of years, it's like I'm still in a fantastic position in life, and time with my family and confidence as a person. And there's outside of the money and the fame and all that stuff. There's other like key lessons that I've learned through baseball that I want the next generation to be able to experience. And so I think a lot of my efforts to be positive for the game have been different than what the game has traditionally been. And I think it's caused a lot of rifts, but it all comes from a place of like trying to connect with the younger fan base and get people interested in baseball. And so yeah, I'd love to work with the league. We talked about that a little bit. I apologize for the things that I've said and the way that I've gone about things, which
I think one of the examples that he had done, I can't remember if this was in the playoffs, because I think it was on Fox, so I'm pretty sure it was. They did like he wasn't pitching this day, but they did like a pre-game interview where he was in the dugout and he had like pulled out some balls and was like, that was when we had the sticky substance issue or whatever, and he'd hold it and he was just like, this is the ball today, and he's like, I don't have anything on my hands and it's like sticking to my hand. And I think he called out Manfred for that. Like, those are the things that I'm like, even in the time watching, I was like, oh, he's gonna get flack for this, whether it's gonna be ownership or Manfred himself. But I'm sure those are some of the things that he's talking about. Like, I kind of regret doing that, but I've grown as a person.
Looking back now, I'm 33 now. Looking back at some of the things I did when I was 20 and coming up in the league, I'm just very embarrassed about them. But I think that's a natural thing. Like, you grow. Hopefully, you learn from your mistakes and you do better year after year.
See, that's like, to me, that's the stuff that I need to hear, because I'm a little bit older than him. I think, yeah, he said he's 33, so I'm 34. So like, and I understand that. Like, even now, like, well, we all have those moments or stupid thought processes, or through anger or sadness or whatever, we do dumb things. But you got to learn from them. You got to try to get better or try to improve, and not just be like, well, that's who I am, because that's a very like immature, stubborn way of thinking. So like you knowing that like people are human, they're gonna make mistakes, but like if you can't, as you know, a 25-year-old or whatever, like can't accept that people are trying to improve and they're gonna make mistakes, it's just like, what pedestal are you sitting on that you're so perfect? You know, that you get to look down on us all.
Even back to my time when I was with the Diamondbacks when I first signed, like I look back at some of the things I did now, I'm like, wow, I was so immature back then. But back then, I'm a 20-year-old, just got drafted in the first round. I think I have everything figured out, and you know, I ruined a lot of relationships, or at least got off to a bad start in a lot of relationships there that I would like to repair. So that's kind of the tone of the conversation. That's what I'm trying to do. I want to be a positive, really.
And in baseball, is it kind of like does Manfred is like the president of the United States?
I like his backdrop.
The governor's got to decide what they get to do, and it's left to the states to make the decision. Is it a similar way where, hey, I'm the commissioner, you know, if these guys want to hire you, it's on them, but I don't have a problem if they hire you? Is that the kind of approach?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way it works is the owners actually elect the commissioner. So the commissioner works for the owners, for the collective group. He's in charge of overseeing the game and making, at the end of the day, making their investment in a baseball team profitable and making it a good investment, growing the league, growing revenues, stuff like that.
So did he say, hey, if the guys want to sign you, great, but he didn't give an endorsement either? He didn't give a nod to say, hey, guys, yeah, he's good. If you guys want to work with them, was there an element of an endorsement where
it's not his?
I don't think he can do something like that.
Sign a player, they go sign the player. Right. It's not really his area.
Have you had any kind of have you pitched for anybody? Have you gone? Have they taken a look at you? Has any team? No one's looked at you yet.
No tryouts.
The performance is the factor. I mean, I pitched in Japan last year. We just saw Yamamoto sign with the Dodgers. They scout him in Japan. They know, each team knows kind of like how they view Japanese.
He did post a video a couple days ago where he was basically throwing BP, like those live batting practice sessions, and they turned it into a game. I know his one friend was in the cage. I don't think he's ever been like a serious athlete, so that's kind of for fun. But I think the other guys were like high school or college kids, so it wasn't like it was like a complete joke or there was like no talent.
Or like performance in Japanese league, how it'll translate. They look at the stuff metrics.
I'm sure he'd be physically ready if someone would just give him a chance.
And they make the decision. And I don't think anyone out there has any question that I'm still one of the most elite guys out there. It's a little different than, you know, other free agencies because the talent is not the question and the money is not the question. Like, I'm willing to play for the league minimum with incentives. I just want an opportunity to go out there.
There's your soundbite.
To prove that I'm still one of the best guys. I realize that there's risk in signing me for the other side. I want it to be a good deal. I don't want one side to get screwed. And so I want to pitch for the league minimum with incentives. So if I pitch like the best guy in the world, then I can earn money like that. And if I don't, then there's no risk for the team. So it's really not a question of talent or money. It's a question of optics, I think. And that's
pretty
the
much
battle we're fighting.
What do you think their risk is? If you're a major, like if we were...
I've seen him on a lot of, or maybe not a lot, but in my timeline shows up where it almost feels like he's doing like a reputation tour. It's like I saw him on this, I've seen him on other things. There was an article that popped up today where they kind of posted the transcript of it, so I read a little bit of it. So I'm like, if I'm his agent, I mean, this is kind of what you have to do, and then hope that enough people kind of become aware of the situation and. You know, I'm sure they've forgotten about him as of like 2 years ago or a year ago and have basically been like, oh, well, he's a murderer. He's a rapist. He's a bad person. And haven't thought a second thought about him since he left the league. So, yeah, I feel like they're kind of doing this like redemption tour, media tour, trying to, you know, people don't necessarily have to like him, but they have to be more lukewarm, neutral on him, I think, in order for teams to take a chance on him. But I mean, you kind of have to do this.
Situation, right? You have to always put yourself in the other person's shoes to say, okay, this is what they want. This is what they fear. What do you think is their concern? And what can you as a player do or agree to in the contract to get them to not worry about that one or two or three things?
Yeah, so I think the first part, identifying the risks, is a little bit easier than the solutions. Identifying risks, you have optics publicly, so fan base stuff. You know, I'm perceived to be a certain way. you sign me, it's like, oh, well, you don't care about women, or oh, you don't, value, how do I explain this to my kids? Like there's those types of questions with the fan base. There's internal stuff. I'm sure there's, these organizations are massive. So you have a lot of different people that feel a lot of different ways. So you have risk of internal culture disruption with the front office and the support staff. I don't think anyone really questions the clubhouse stuff. I'm fine in the clubhouse. I have a good reputation behind closed doors. In the clubhouse, publicly, it's a little bit different. But so there's those risks, and then there's sponsors. Do people drop sponsorships? There's a financial component to it as well. I think the upside is there. You spend league minimum that you have to spend anyway, and you potentially get someone that pitches at a $40 million a year level. But those are some of the concerns that I've identified.
If I wanted to segue right now, I'd be like, oh, so Oakland Athletics, you need some talent. Instead of play for the minimum, you don't want to pay anybody. Why not? How
I go about solving those, I personally don't think that it's more than a 3 or 4 day story if someone signs me. I think it goes away. I think I handle it, and then it's just about baseball. I could be very wrong on that. That's just my personal opinion. So I don't know how to solve that one. I'm happy to have any conversations and work with the team in any way, whether it's having.
I don't think it'd be a 3 or. He actually, in the transcripts that I just saw, he actually said, I don't know, maybe it's a couple more weeks, maybe it's longer than that. But I think it'd probably be like a couple of months, like by May, if he's performing well or the team's no issues. One of his players comes out and gives him a hug, does the Pee Wee Reese to Jackie Robinson thing. Like, I think that's when it kind of gets put to bed and put to rest. But so I think it'd be a couple months. I mean, spring training could be tough with, I don't know, maybe hecklers. But I think even now today, like, hecklers aren't as naughty and disgusting as they were. That's just kind of the environment we live now. So I think it'd be a couple months. No culture issues, nobody backstabbing, nothing like that. Like if you put him on a team with like a good veteran clubhouse presence, there would be no issues at all, and it'd be forgotten about by May.
Conversations with the local media, the national media, if that's something that they want me to,
the journalists will write their stories, and eventually it'll get tiring.
All those different things. I'm happy to have those conversations. Ultimately, like I said earlier, I want it to be a partnership, and I want to do well for the team that signs me, and I want them to do well for me, and so both parties are happy. So I'm willing to address any concern that they have. I just don't know how to do that ahead of time. If I go do a bunch of media and address stuff, then it's like, all right, well, now you're in the media, a lot with this as, kind of surrounding this topic. Maybe the team just wants me to not be in the media and play baseball. I'm fine with that. Maybe a team wants me to address it, but different teams feel different ways. So it's hard to have one solution that like satisfies the whole of the 30 teams. Ultimately, I just looking for to sit down with someone and like have a conversation and like be given the chance to prove that I can be a positive and that I can grow the fan base. I can connect with the local community. I can pitch well on the field. I can help the players in the clubhouse become better pitchers. Help the team win, bring playoffs and World Series to the city. I think there's a lot of positives. I know I can deliver on those things. I just need to be given the opportunity. So,
do you think with any of these teams, like, is there any teams you wouldn't play for, or you'd play for anybody that give you an opportunity today?
No, I'd play for anyone. I don't have like. You mentioned earlier that I'm kind of a troll. Like I've trolled a lot, and it's all trying to drive fan engagement. I have no problems with any of the teams. I'd play for the Dodgers again. I'd play for the Astros. I'd play. It doesn't matter to me. Like
you just want to get back in there and play.
I want to play. Okay. I've spent 30 years of my life developing a skill set that's like top 15 in the world. I'd like to be able to use it because I love playing. I love competing, and I feel like I have a lot left to give.
Yeah, and your preparation, the way you would go about preparing it, was very different and weird and controversial, and nobody understood it. And even in which team was it you were playing for, that even the pitchers were coming to you to learn from the.
I think it was the Guardians.
Improve their games, like you were helping.
I think Clevenger was one of those guys.
How to become a better pitcher. So, but let me do this for some of the audience that doesn't know the whole story. Okay, they don't know what really happened with Lindsey Hill. You made a video, okay? And the video was the whole story with what took place, and the texts were out, and you kind of negotiated where you could talk about it for the rest of your career, because that was obviously very important. You even sued her. You came back and sued her. Can you walk the audience through maybe the process of what happened? Event.
All right, the video that they're about to show was on Trevor Bauer's page. So, and this is, they speed this up a little bit. Like, I don't know if it's 1.5 or what. So that's not how he normally talks that fast, but I know they're trying to like save some time. But if you do actually want to watch it, kind of, I think it's pretty much in entirety, but if you want to watch the whole thing, it is on his channel somewhere, or at least it was. I don't know if it's been private or taken down since, but it is a pretty good summary in his own words that I think we're about to get to.
Yeah, I'm doing this. We met here. Here's what took place, and this happened. Whatever information you can give on a process for the audience that doesn't know, and then we can go into some of the other topics.
Yeah, high level. She reached out to me on Instagram. We started talking on Instagram. Eventually, she came over to my house one night. So she lived in San Diego. I was in Pasadena. She drove up to Pasadena, had a nice night together, decided to meet up 3 weeks later she came back, had a great night. She left, no problems. And then a couple days later, I'm getting texts about I'm in the hospital and, what's going on. And she started accusing me of things that did not happen. Eventually, she filed a domestic violence restraining order, basically saying she was, scared or in danger. That's a public filing. So her written version of events went public. The media picked up on it. I was put on administrative leave by MLB, not allowed to pitch. I didn't have any chance at that point to defend myself. We went to family court, I think 6 weeks or so later. We had 4 days there where a judge heard her side of the story. I didn't testify. There was an open investigation, so my lawyers advised me not to say anything. And so the judge heard her side of why she needed a protective order and then denied it, which for those who don't know, that's like the lowest standard in all of the entire justice system, the lowest standard of proof. And the judge threw it out and said that she had materially misled the court, and that there was no wrongdoing on my part.
If that doesn't make sense, hopefully I can break this down. So, what are you saying, like the lowest level or whatever? It means like, in order to be charged with something, there's like a standard that's set of amount of proof that you have to bring in to justify a lawsuit or a claim or whatever. And he's saying that the sexual whatever stuff that she was claiming, the domestic assault or whatever, whatever he just said was the specifics, is actually like really low. So you don't need a lot of proof. You just need very little in order to get charged or in order to advance. And that wasn't even met. But again, at the time, she gets to say what she wants to say, and he can't really say anything and defend himself. So that's kind of the time period where, you had all your people that were basically saying, oh, he's guilty, he's an asshole, he deserves this, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, other people that, I don't know, haven't really lived life and see now some shit goes down. We're not there to be like, yo, just slow your roll. Let's see what happens. And then MLB owners or whatever are being reactive to their market, to their audiences. So they're like, we got to do something. So suspension, investigation. I mean, that they had to do that. They had to. I'm just surprised that this whole thing like took so long.
I think that was in August. I could have the month wrong. It's a long time ago now, but there's an open investigation. Obviously, the allegations against me were very serious, and as they should be investigated to the fullest extent. So as the Pasadena Police Department and I think I don't know exactly what all other entities were involved, but as they investigate it, I was still on administrative leave, so I wasn't able to play for the remainder of the 2021 season. That lasted into spring training time, where I was on administrative leave in 2022. They eventually decided not to press any charges, so I was never arrested, never charged with anything. And then I was, after that, suspended by MLB for originally 2 years. So by the time we went through the process of appeal, in December, I believe, of 2022, the suspension was reduced to 194 games, which is the number of games that I'd missed, and then I was cleared to play immediately. I still had 1 year left on my Dodger contract, so in January of 2023, they released me from that, and then I went and played in Japan in 2023, and now we're here. So that's like high-level sequence of events.
Now, text came out about her. Rob, can you prepare that video? Maybe the first 90 seconds will be good for the audience to see. I think this is you actually showing the text. Just play it from the beginning. Go for it.
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. A text Lindsey Hill sent to a friend before she ever even met me. What should I steal? She asked another. And
Again, they've like sped this up like, I don't know, 1.5. I don't know what it is, but they've sped this up. It's kind of, hopefully you guys can understand it.
Reference to visiting my house for the first time. The answer? Take his money. So how might that work? I'm going to his house Wednesday, she said. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. Then, after the first time we met, net worth is 51 mil, she said. Bitch, you better secure the bag, was the response. But how was she going to do that? Need daddy to choke me out, she said. Being an absolute whore to try to get in on his 51 million, read another text. Then, after the second time we met, former Padres pitcher Jacob Nix told her, you got to get this bag. I'll give you 50,000, Lindsey replied. Her AA sponsor asked her at one point, do you feel a tiny bit guilty? Not really, she replied. Since then, her legal team has approached me multiple times about coming to a financial settlement.
Psycho.
As I've done since day one, I refuse to pay her even a single cent. In August of 2021, Lindsey Hill's claims were heard in court, and during those legal proceedings, critical information was deliberately and unlawfully concealed from me and my legal team. Information like this video, which was taken by Lindsey Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021. Without my knowledge or consent, of course. In it, you can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face. I think it paints a pretty clear picture of what actually happened the evening of May 15th and why the video was originally concealed from us.
That's so damning because the one photo or whatever that we saw was she was like had her like bruised or whatever face, like she'd been hit in the like around the orbital bone, and it's like clearly there was nothing. But that was like or like he just said, like never released. They hid that stuff from him.
Yeah. After hearing the evidence available to her, Judge Diana Gold-Saltman found that Lindsey Hill had misled the court. She found her claims to be materially misleading. She denied her request for a domestic violence restraining order, and she found that no sexual assault or non-consensual conduct took place. Now, some of you might not know about restraining order hearings. I know I didn't, but I've since learned that it's extremely rare for a request for a restraining order to be denied because the standard of proof that you need to obtain one is extremely low. So you can make of that what you will. The fact is, I was never arrested. I was never charged with a crime, and I won the only legal proceeding that took place without my side of the story even being heard. And most importantly, as I've said from day one, I never sexually assaulted Lindsey Hill, or anyone else for that matter. So I sued her, which prompted her to countersue me. Quite frankly, regardless of the outcome in court, I've paid significantly more in legal fees than Lindsey Hill could ever pay me in her entire life. And I knew that would be the case going in. But the lawsuit was never about the money for me. It was the only way for me to obtain critical information to clear my name. The discovery process in that lawsuit recently concluded, at which point Lindsey Hill's legal team again came to us with another proposal to resolve the case. This time, however, they weren't seeking any money from me. Having received much of the information that had been hidden from us, a small portion of which I've referenced here, I was willing to agree to the terms proposed. Both parties would drop their respective lawsuits, and neither of us would pay either side any money. I also retained my right to speak publicly about the case, something I have not been at liberty to do since June of 2021. So, as of today, both lawsuits have been settled. Now, over the last 2 years, I've been forced to defend my integrity and my reputation in a very public setting, but hopefully this is the last time I have to do so, as I prefer to just remain focused on doing my job, winning baseball games and entertaining fans around the world. So today, I'm happy to be moving on with my life.
How much did it cost you? If you were to put a number to it, last however long it's been. Renewal and contracts, additional things you could do, maybe a World Series win, maybe two.
Sponsors lost and never gonna gain again.
That had a lot of legs to do a lot of things. What do you think it cost you?
Are you talking future earnings potential as well?
Give me all of it. Yeah, during that time and future earnings.
It's
at least
during
100
that
mil.
time, it's mid 8 figures between legal costs, suspension, off-field stuff, endorsements, all that. Lifetime earnings, probably 350 is conservative. I was making $42.5 million a year. At that point, I was 30. So if I decline linearly from 30 to 40 and end up at 40 making 20 million, which would be well below, what guys like Scherzer and Verlander are making at 40. Let's just say I declined linearly, then I would have averaged 30,750,000 for 10 years. So that'd be 300 million.
300 right there.
Plus the
100 that you
and
lost.
You were innocent. So $350 million to $400 million, and you were innocent.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the one thing I think about myself is I have two ways I process this, but I want to kind of see where you take this. On one end, Dana White knew how to use Connor. Okay. Connor came in. You used to do your arms like this when you would go, and then
Connor.
Pitch with your eyes, struck him out, and then he hit a home run, and he did this to you. And well, by the way, that's
great.
Freaking awesome, right? That makes me want to watch SportsCenter at night.
That's the whole point.
Was that Julio?
From Connor, in order to sell a UFC fight, you have
Can't
to
remember
have
who that was.
a reason for people to want to watch. So you have to have a storyline going into that match.
That's right.
So there's no storylines in baseball anymore. It used to be, you have Yankees, Red Sox, and there's this big rivalry. Then free agency came around, and players move around so much that the players don't.
Pride is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's no storylines in baseball during the regular season. So you need storylines. You need people to antagonize. You need people to fight back. So Tatis,
it's Tatis. Okay.
Pitch with one eye closed.
I knew it was one of those young guns.
Hitters. It was fun. Made for good social clips. A lot of engagement. And then he ended up hitting a home run off me and celebrated with his dugout by putting one hand over his eye. That's great. It went viral. It was everywhere. Baseball was talked about on live, on national TV for 3 days because of it. I don't care that I'm on the
it's
losing end of
that's
that.
what you want if you're MLB.
Sometimes and losing end, but you need storylines. You need social media clips that connect with youth. When Steph Curry hits a 3 in an All-Star game, it's meaningless game, but it's trending on Twitter and X and everywhere. It's everywhere. Mike Trout, one of the best baseball players, not the best baseball player of all time, makes an insane catch, robs a home run. You can't find it on social media. You got to connect with the youth where the youth are, and that was the whole point of all.
I mean, I'm not even the biggest social media guy, but this is why it's hard to keep up with the players, whether they're stars or average Joes on the West Coast, because I don't know what the beef is with ESPN or whatever, but ESPN for the last decade or whatever, for whatever reasons, I don't know if it's because the start of MLB Network or what, but they do not cover baseball at all. They give it its maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes a show, and then it's everything else. And so even for the hardcore people like me that go looking for this stuff, I can't even see it on your basic cable TV or whatever, which is kind of why I stopped with cable in general, because all I ever wanted was sports highlights and clips. So then, okay, you go to social media or whatever, and again, unless it's one of the major markets and kind of in your time zones or whatever, sure, I can get Yankees and Red Sox and Chicago stuff, but maybe, with me where I am now, maybe Atlanta, because I follow that stuff, but if it's not one of those major market teams and the players, don't say anything or promote themselves, you miss it. And that is one thing that MLB needs to get a lot better of. So kind of what he's saying, even if he's playing that heel role or whatever, he's just trying stuff to go viral and help the game grow and, get household, I don't want to say toddlers, but your tweens and teenagers, oh, now they know who this guy is because of something silly or something some rivalry feud that's brewing that they don't know much about, and now they want to tune in to see what happens.
All that, and so
very wrestling
I don't need to go out of my way to antagonize people or whatever. It's an entertainment sport. I'm trying to entertain people.
It's funny. I wrote that one word here. I said the one thing, because when you, I put a tweet out the other day about the fact that NFL is destroying, NBA. And George Karl responded, and he was upset at what I said about the NBA because I feel LeBron's destroyed the game, my opinion again, and specifically with the eyeballs, where the most viewed playoff game of all time, I think, was Game 6 of Utah Jazz against the Chicago Bulls, got 38 million views or 36 million views, and ever since then, we've hit 30, I think, once or twice. Everything's in the 13s and the 12s and the 14 and the 18.
Yeah, I felt like NBA has declined a ton.
And MLB, as somebody who loves baseball, I'm a diehard baseball guy. I grew up just following stats of baseball. because baseball offered me more stats than any other sport. Okay, and I like numbers. I'm a numbers guy, right? But if I was the MLB,
Me too. That's why I'm thinking about getting Stat-O-Matic.
Or president or commissioner of MLB. Here's what I'd be thinking about. You know what case study I'd be paying attention to today? One case study, if I'm the MLB. How much eyeballs and market has Taylor Swift brought to the NFL? Think about that. How much? You know, if I'm a betting man, the record, you know what the record is for the most people watching the Super Bowl? I think it's 114.4 million. Can you type in most viewed Super Bowl of all time? I want to say it's 114.4 million.
He's got a point. I was kind of laughing but when he said this, and I don't know if he was the first one I heard it from, but I was like, all right, who's the like really good baseball player with like a little bit of a track record, but like young and single that people can get behind? You know, like Julio, like I was just like, you could say like Mike Trout, but I think Mike Trout's married, and like Bryce Harper's married. But I'm like, who's that guy that everybody like? We need to get Ohtani a girlfriend that is like I don't know, some adorable, lovable actress or something, and just plaster that everywhere and see what happens. Because not only would that help us the game grow in the States, it helps it grow overseas as well. Marketing ploys. It's not real. It's all scheduled and fake. But it gets eyes.
2015. There you go. I got it right.
Get Ohtani a girlfriend.
14.4 million. 2015 Super Bowl, right, is the most viewed Super Bowl of all time. I'm willing to bet this Super Bowl could get close to 130. That's how crazy this Super Bowl I think is going to get, right? Depending on how they measure it and what it's going to be like. Of course, a lot of people are going to go to parties, so you're not going to be using multiple devices. But I think it's going to get to the 120 to 130 mark, and I think it's going to break the record. Why? Because the NFL got a chance to get into a market they were not in before, right? They brought eyeballs they couldn't bring in before. So with baseball, you know, what's baseball going to do to get eyeballs that they wouldn't bring in before? Let's take a few case studies of what players changed a sport, right? Tiger Woods, what audience did he bring? Non-whites. It wasn't just blacks. It's non-whites. If you were not white, you were following Tiger. You got to be, you telling me a black kid is going around beating yes, freaking underdog. I'm all in with
I wasn't even a golf guy, but hearing about Tiger got me excited.
Wow, sick, insane. So golf goes to Holder. Everybody's wearing Tiger shirts, Tiger shoes.
And a 10-year younger audience. Immediately.
I know.
Yeah, the age was a lot different.
Okay, so you go, what did Conor do to UFC? Changed the game. Conor did to UFC, right? Brought all these eyeballs and, you know.
Blew it up.
Yeah, no question about it. As an entrepreneur of a Fortune 500 company, who brought eyeballs to capitalism? Elon Musk. Why? He's a troll. He would have fun. He was different. He would be selling his Tesla for how much? $69,000. Out of all the prices you can sell Tesla for, you mean to tell me you want to sell for $69,000? Yes. He would do.
I can't think of the word. I'm struggling to find it, but it's like, I don't want to say it's like drama brings money or attention or anything, like, because that's not the word I'm looking for. But like, it reminds me of that scene in the NWO movie or whatever, where they have, you know, there's people that bought the CDs just so they could break them and ruin them outside the stores to cause a scene. And he was like, you know, they were like, what do you think about that? And he's like, I don't care, man. They bought them. Still making money off of it. It just gives us more attention. I was just like, yeah, that was the business savvy part of him, where it's like, but I'm struggling to find what the word is that I'm thinking of. But basically, like, yeah, doesn't matter if it's like good or bad attention or whatever. It still gets eyes and still brings money. Sadly,
everything with 420 and 69, and he was again toying with everybody, right? So it brought eyeballs. You need agitation. You need to agitate the enemy. That brings, you know, a.
First, Paul Heyman would say, "We need disruptors to the norm."
The other day, did you see who was the one that got punched in the face? The Toronto guy, Batista, got punched in the face by the second baseman or
Odor.
And then you're like, wait, what? When's the next time they're playing? Whether you like it or not, you're following this, right? Yep. Sosa and McGuire did this.
Or what? Last year with Tim Anderson and Jose Ramirez.
You had an element of that. And you have an element of it. When I say had, I mean that's when we saw it, right? Where you were making people.
Which, by the way, Anderson side with the Marlins.
Who's this guy? Wants to be a YouTuber. He wants to be an influencer, but he's a baseball guy, and he's got this stick that he's going like this with. What the hell is wrong with this guy? He's interesting. Why is he pitching it from the center field from the left field to the right field. The coaches are upset at him. You're going to throw out your elbow. That's the fastest way to do this. Why does he have to have a running start to pitch to the catcher? All of these things you did, that was weird. Do you think there was an element of you being a little too controversial for baseball, that people don't know how to handle you?
Yes.
Yeah. For sure. I think,
Especially with the owners, basically,
I
are
have a lot
like,
of thoughts on that. One,
me too, because I was like, especially the owners, because they're kind of your typical, I don't want to say stubborn, but like set in their ways, old money, white dudes. Like, they don't want disruptors. They want to keep padding and have their regular money coming in each month or each year. They don't want anybody to change the status quo because it might hurt their dollar, it might hurt their wallet.
and I didn't go about it in the perfect way. It's one thing to do like YouTube and be out there social media wise, and I antagonize people obviously in my organizations too. I was very bullheaded on like, I know what I'm talking about, and I was right on a lot of things. I was also wrong on a lot of things, and a little bit more humility would have done well behind the scenes. So I don't want to try to absolve myself of all responsibility here, but I think that baseball is a very traditional game. It's got a very much older audience than a lot of other sports. And I think more than any other sport, the fan base wants baseball to stay pure to like baseball and what they grew up with.
I do feel like
and
it's
all that.
slower
And,
to adapt to things as well.
The landscape is changing. I think that you need to have.
I mean, just look at the TV
more
stuff.
Entertainment in baseball, and in order to have entertainment, you have to have those things that are different, that are quirky. You have to have storylines, friction. Like, you need those things to get talked about.
I agree with him. I feel like that the way that most sports are going this way, they're way too, I guess, kind of introduce the friction or the drama is all through gambling. And I don't like the way that, like, sure, you might get some casual people in there and they'll do it for the money and for their gambling addiction. But I feel like that sets like a bad precedent that like certain things are going to relate sports to just gambling. And I don't like that, because like there should be more of a, all right, yes, we like competition, we like strategy, or we're behind the city or the players or whatever, but I don't want the correlation to just be gambling sports. Like, that's the part that I feel like it's going that way. And maybe MLB likes that for the attention, but like I don't. Personally, I don't.
And so I'm willing to do that. I've never much cared, if people like or dislike me. That's a whole other story about my childhood, but I was willing to play that part and willing to do that. I viewed it as good for the game. I think a lot of people viewed it as disruptive. It caused a lot of attention, which is what it was designed to do, but that is viewed sometimes as a negative, like, oh, it's all about you, or you're in the media so much, everyone else in the clubhouse is getting asked about you and the things that you do, and so it's very centered. I got the impression from a couple teams over the years that they viewed it as a negative. All the eyeballs that I would bring to my social channels and to the vlog on YouTube and Twitter profile and stuff, they viewed it as a negative because there was so much media attention on one player. It wasn't on the team. But that's what sells. People wear LeBron jerseys. They don't wear generic like Laker jerseys anymore. It's people are fans of players. They follow their favorite player where they go.
All of that I'm okay with. The only thing I have a problem with as an owner, if I was an owner that you were playing for my team and you're messing around with a drone before the ALCS, I would lose my mind. I swear to God, I would be like, what is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
We're about to win we have a shot. Those are the kind of things.
Yeah, that's what I like about this guy.
Like in the Army, you sign a contract, you're in the Army. Guess what? We're going to go party on the weekend. All right, don't be stupid. We're going to go do our thing. But if you harm your body, that's government property. What are you doing harming the body? You're hurting us, right? So that was the part where the creativity and all of that stuff, fine. Antagonizing, fine. Calling out your own team you're playing for, it's just a code. You just don't do that. And you try to do it in the most subtle way possible, like Michael used to do it. And Michael was very classy when he would call out his own team. He would say, yeah, these guys have put a great team together. But the players come here to watch the fans come here to watch the players play, not the GM and the management. Yeah. That was his way of saying what he did. But the injury stuff, that's when it's affecting the team. Those things.
I guess related to this, but also adjacent to this, I agree with him as well. And I think this is why you have those stipulations and contracts now. Like, yeah, I don't know if you guys remember Jason Williams out of Duke when he was with the Bulls or whatever. I think he ended up having like a really bad motorcycle accident that screwed up his knee. And like, he was a very explosive like point guard that could score kind of at will. And I think they lost him for like 2 years due to that. And I think Tatis was the same way, or one of those young gun baseball players, same thing. I think it was a mess around with a motorcycle or something. Like, if you sign these guys to certain contracts and like your product, your skill is like your body, you have to abide by these things. And I have no problems with owners being like there's parts where it's like too much. Like if they're like, hey, this is the diet you must follow, or else like I can void the contract. All right, too much. But I think it's fair for them to also be like, hey, let's not put yourself in risky situations. So, hey, no motorcycle driving, no skydiving, I don't know, whatever reckless thing they might be interested in. So it's kind of related to this or whatever. I honestly think that's like a contract that they could set up. And I think this would be groundbreaking and probably hadn't been done before, or at least if it has, I'm not aware of it, that they could do with Trevor Bauer. Where they could be like, and he's going to mention something about like with women and signing contracts. But I mean, in general, like, all right, no motorcycle this, no vlogs in the clubhouse. I don't know, something weird like must submit a drug test or a background check on your friends or something like that. Something like that might be a little too much, but like along those lines of like, if you're really trying to like bring in this troubled player or whatever, or if there's some type of like PR issues, I think there's a way to mitigate it through like certain contract terms. So it'd be like, hey, like say he signs with Boston or whatever, it'd be like, hey, we allow you to speak to these kind of networks because these are the ones we trust. Don't really want you to talk to these people because they're known to like twist the facts, blah, blah, blah. All right, then those are terms that I might agree to. I don't know if anyone's going to go that hardcore about it, but like just to kind of like throw some topics out there, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Are things that bother me more that I would be concerned about than you going out there and doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think that comes with maturity anyways. There's a difference between being, this phase. You're a young 33. You just turned 33 last week or 10 days, January 18th, I think, right?
17th, yeah.
17th. You just turned. So it's not like you were 33 and a half going on 34. You're a fresh 33, right?
Yeah.
So, you still got a run rate. But
he's basically like 2 years younger than me.
going with this theme of marketing, branding, all of that stuff, do you think sometimes the first person that does it gets destroyed, ousted, then they come back and say, listen, some of the stuff Trevor was doing was kind of cool. And you know what? Maybe if the next guy, we got to be able to handle this next guy in a better way. Let's make sure we coach him that when a girl DMs you and they want to come over and all this stuff, why don't you take a page out of some of Derek Jeter's playbook where, they got to sign and have lawyers protecting it because you're officially a target. Like,
even that stuff has been blown up.
Your room or no? You know what I'm talking about? Where
this is interesting.
They signed a contract.
It's interesting because, like, it's today's society. It's almost if you have someone sign an NDA, you're like, oh well, why would you have them sign an NDA if you're not doing anything? And if that comes out, then it's just like
it's bad
you're
both ways.
Guilty before just because you had an NDA.
Dude, you got to protect yourself, though.
I've known players though that have faced that.
Yeah.
That it got kept from the public eye, but they had. That's part of the threat.
Got a reputation.
Sign this NDA. If this goes public, you're going to be looked at as doing something wrong. You don't want that. Pay me some money. Like that's very common in athletics. So even just an NDA, like
Jersey Chasers,
breaking it. A lot of these girls don't have nearly the money that it costs.
They have nothing to lose.
The girl doesn't have the amount of money that would cost the athlete, right? The athletes are making so much money.
Of course.
So it's like there's no penalty to them in a way.
But you can't tell me other players
That's another thing with the crying rape that didn't really happen, or the sexual assaults that didn't really happen that they fake. In most of these cases, it's kind of like, all right, well, if they lie or misled the judge or whatever, and there's no penalty. Like it's not like, oh, well, you perjury or whatever. Like, all right, well, now you're gonna spend 6 months in jail. Like as far as I'm aware, there's no kind of like counter penalty to this thing. Like, because I know the one story that I told you earlier about that lady that the guy spent multiple years in jail. I think she might have got probation, for a year or something. But I was like, you ruined the guy's life. Possibly would have made millions of dollars. And you're gonna get 6 months probation. Like, that's just mind blowing to me.
Like NBA, they ran.
It's like, okay, so if this were to happen, somebody could do it and be like, all right, at worst, I'm gonna get 6 months probation. Like, all right, it's worth the risk if I can pull it off and get millions of dollars out of some star celebrity athlete. If you get what I'm saying.
And through girls, right? And what happened? You don't see it like you see. Michael doesn't have a lot of stuff that came back with that, and we know Michael had a lot of fun, right? You got Magic. Are you kidding me? Like Magic, he said himself. You know,
Magic was different time though. Different time.
I don't know what the number was. He said I had 14 girls at the same time one time. Okay, and he said I ran through 1,000 probably, and the number he gave I believe was 1,000. Nothing came back. So maybe that's in the 80s, and it's a different era we're talking about, where it's not when the Me Too movement became hot. But today, if I'm your lawyer, if I'm your manager, you know, we're getting the, you know, the movie that George Clooney did with Catherine Zeta-Jones. You ever seen that movie where they're trying to get a prenuptial, and at the end he's like, "I love you so." Yeah, that's the one. What is it called? Rob, you got that up real quickly. What is it called? Intolerable cruelty. Yeah. Oh, it's done by
I've never
Brian
seen
Grazer.
this.
I just saw him last week at the Polo Lounge. So intolerable cruelty, and the whole concept is about what? The Macy prenup. Yeah. That you can't break the Macy prenup. Listen, you're a guy. You're young. What are you gonna do? You're gonna go not having sex for 10 years and you play baseball? Like, is the Yankees gonna say, "Hey, here, sign a contract," but guess what? For the next 10 years, you can't get together with a girl. Your temper's probably gonna be worse in the locker room. We need you to have some fun privately as well, right? But for me, I would probably go one, protect myself. If I'm a manager of yours or a lawyer of yours, dude, I'm finding out exactly the right way to write the contract agreement to make sure nothing can happen to you, even to the point of, "Hi, my name is Trevor. What's your name?" "Jackie." "Jackie, how do we meet?" "Such and such." "Who DM'd who?" "I DM'd you. Can you please show proof that you DM'd me?" Boom. And we're going to have some fun right now. Yes? Yes. You were...
That would be so awkward.
To be here.
But I get his point.
Great. This goes in a file, okay? And then your lawyer and whatever saves that file. Today's era, if you don't protect yourself in some creative ways, and by the way, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not saying that's what I would be doing. But to me, when you're coming up, was there talks on the inside where the next Trevor Bauer...
I don't know if this is a thing or not, because I could see this, if it's not already, becoming a thing of like player protecting your brand or protecting yourself against jersey chasers, blah blah blah. Like, now that athletes make so much money, the thing that I guess would set precedent for this was if you've ever watched the docu series, I think Broke, where it talks about a bunch of athletes that like were never really, they came from nothing, then they're making millions of dollars, they had no idea how to like financially take care of themselves or do taxes or anything like that. So then they eventually spent it all and were broke, even though they made millions and millions of dollars as athletes. And so eventually this happened enough to enough athletes that, whether it was I don't think it was the owners or the teams, but it might have ended up, or maybe it started with that and then it turned into like the players union. Well, they made these classes that you'd had to go through either like post-draft when you first got on a team, or they did them each year in spring training or whatever. Like, I'm sure after once or twice, it probably gets boring, but they would do it for like the newer players or the younger players. So then they at least had like a game plan or, a somewhat script to follow to be like, hey, you don't want to end up broke, follow this financial plan. Like, put this amount of money away, hire this person, or the team provides this tax person so you don't get charged for that. Hey, don't give all your friends blah, blah, blah. Don't go out buying 10 cars, like, because the value is going to deteriorate. Like, I could see something like that today happening, because I'm sure they already have something in place for social media. I'm sure the PR team's all over that. I don't even think most players actually run their accounts anymore if they're under a major team. I think their PR person has a designated person that either posts stuff for them or has to like run through them. So I could see something like this eventually taking place, where it's like, hey, if you want a relationship with an athlete, you got to go through this program, or you got to consent to this or write this down or, you know, I don't think it's defined yet, but I could see that happening here in the next couple of years. And this could be a key reason why.
That's going to come up. Look, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Have this lawyer, do this before you do this. Talk to this player that used to be here. Hey, Johnny, can you coach such and such to make sure he's a good-looking guy? He's going to go through a lot of this. What can he do to...
Hold on, real funny. The thing that just popped in my head was, I don't know if this is embarrassing or not, but I think they did that in like 50 Shades. You know, that kind of like that, I won't say raunchy, but that like sex movie or whatever. Where, yeah, I remember they went into a boardroom and they went over terms of like what was allowed and what wasn't allowed and what she could agree to and what she wouldn't agree to. I'm like, I wonder if that would be like, I feel like that would be so awkward, especially for someone that you just met. But like, I don't know, maybe something like that. Hey, tell me the stuff you're open to, blah, blah, blah. All right, now it's on a contract. You know, like, I wouldn't even be like, hey, we need to review this. I'd be like, all right, fill this out. I'll look over, sign it, both sign it, and boom, we move on.
To protect himself against girls that are going to want to use Me Too against him. Talk to my lawyer. Does that take place behind closed doors or no?
I've not had any of those conversations. I think it's an important one to have. I think the social media landscape really blowing up over the last 10 years has created a lot of opportunities for things like this to happen, and it's probably moved a lot faster than the industry is ready for and
Yeah, I
able
agree.
to kind of compensate for. I think those discussions need to be had. It's very hard to figure out a solution, though. There's a lot of ways around things. Like even if you have all of the text messages, like I have all the text messages, even if you have video, like the morning after, and there's no marks on girls'
Well, no,
face.
they
like,
said if they had the video earlier, it wouldn't have gone, right? They did say that one clip,
Yeah.
if they had it immediately, it wouldn't have gone this far.
Yeah.
So that would have helped.
Yeah. So I think keeping all the documentation is very important. And, if you can find some way to, I don't know, get consent to video the thing or audio or some record of what actually happened would be important.
I don't think this would have mattered too much. I think it eventually would have come out. But can you imagine if they didn't have that video? Like that actual day after day of proof with the video of her basically being fine. Like, how much longer would this have gone on to? I mean, the text messages don't help. They could definitely see that she's trying to, like, entrap him and manipulate him. But I'm like, the video was the damning, like, smoking gun evidence, too. So I wonder what would have happened if they didn't have that video.
That's,
Would have been crazy.
It's double-edged sword on that front. But I agree with you. You have to have something that's going to protect you. Unfortunate part is, like, the actual implementation of it and how you do that, and then the athlete's willingness to actually do it every single time. Like it's a lot. Like there's solutions that need to be discovered there. But
when I joined the Army, the first thing my MEP station, then you go to your unit.
They do go on to other topics, too, just
15 will get
FYI
you
for those
20.
listening.
That was the biggest line in the Army. 15 will get you 20. What is 15 will get you 20? You're 19 years old. You hook up with someone's 15-year-old daughter, you're going to get 20 years. What you're saying, Sarge? You ID everybody. You want me to ID a girl? Yup. Even if they look 24, you
Yep.
ID them. So whenever we would go where it was point of
Girls are
something
crazy
happening,
like that
we'd
with
have to say,
ages,
"Can I see your
man.
ID?"
yeah,
You're stupid. No, can I see your ID? Are you serious? Yes. You want me to see? You want to see? Yeah. 23 years old. Okay, cool. Let's go.
yeah.
Versus it was, oh, can't, right? So even military would prep soldiers to set them up for success, not set them up for failure. I don't know if in orientation they talked about this kind of stuff. I would assume they do.
Yeah. I've never had a conversation like that.
You mean to tell me nobody in major leagues, any of the teams you were part of, talked about how to handle girls that come up to you and DM you?
I've never had it. I mean, they may talk to other players. I've never had it.
That's consistent with things that I've read and heard, that there are more counselors that are in college football right now that talk about cleat chasers, frat parties, and things like this to be careful with in the age of social media than there are in Major League Baseball. I've heard that the NBA, which dates back
Interesting.
to John Kemp, actually has some level of counseling that they do, especially financial counseling, because there's a guy named Truck who took a lot of money from a lot of NBA players, and NFL players. So there's like this financial and other things that are coming in certain sports. But I've heard that Major League Baseball, hey, you're number 7. You report to the Oklahoma City Little Ducks in 4 months. Congratulations. Come, and if you're a first rounder, come to the podium, put on the hat, and now we won't see you for 3 years until you come up.
There's a lot of conversations
Yeah.
that happen around how to handle media in interviews. Like we'll go through media training, and okay, when they ask this question, how do you deflect? Here, watch some interviews of football players, basketball players. Here's some things that they did well. Here's some things that they did wrong. Here's how to say words without saying anything at all, and like just pass the interview and not make any controversy. Like we have a lot of.
It's funny that he mentions this because this is another thing that I don't know if we'll get to it today, and I don't have it fired up, but with all the Anthony Rendon stuff going on right now, I just can't help but kind of laugh to myself because everyone's like, oh my God, how could he say that? I can't believe he's being honest about this stuff. Shouldn't he deflect and say blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, have you guys not been saying this over the last couple of years? How you get tired of athletes that are media trained telling you nothing and not answering your questions or deflecting your questions and making him seem like he answered? Anthony Rendon is actually being like honest with stuff and gave you the clips or the sound bites of an honest, truthful kind of answer, and you guys jumped all over him or calling him an asshole and doesn't care. And it's like, what did he basically say? There's more important things in life than baseball. It's not my top priority. My family and my faith are top priorities. Are we really going to hold that against the guy? Like, I just think that's kind of ridiculous, and I feel like it's almost the media being hypocrites because they're like, they never tell us anything good. They're never, it's like you're looking for sound bites. Athletes are trained to not give you those sound bites because they don't want to get in trouble. But then at the same time, like this whole discussion as well, like, well, you kind of need some sound bites to sell the game. So then it comes down to finding the right sound bites to help promote the game or start rivalries or feuds or whatever. So it's a big old game and kind of a joke with the PR stuff, to be honest. But yeah,
a lot of those types of conversations. And we have, Major League Baseball has like the domestic violence trainings that every player goes through every spring training. And, if a girl's too drunk and, can't consent, then that would be sexual assault and like training of that type of thing. But there's never been a discussion, at least that I've had, on like, okay, you could face this type of situation. Here's something that you can do as a single guy with millions of dollars, like ahead of meeting up with a girl. Like, here's best practices on blah, 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 blah. It's kind of been a hands-off, like your personal life is your personal life.
I don't know if the Cardinals did this specifically or if it was St. Louis in general, because maybe the owners all got together. Everyone deserves a second chance. I don't know about everyone. It kind of depends on what it is, but I mean, like, as long as you learn from it, I do think in general most people deserve a second chance. But what I was saying with this stuff was, tragically, a lot of these things it seems, happen before the teams or ownership or even management, like the small players. It seems like these bad things have to happen for them to recognize, oh, this could be a trend. Oh, this is what's going on, for them to react and then set up a guideline. So, like, for example, I remember when St. Louis, the Rams were still in St. Louis, and they had like a couple of like manslaughters, DUIs. And then the same thing, I think there was a couple of Cardinals that had DUI problems and stuff like that. And it got to the point where, and this might have changed, but this is what I remember from like the early 2000s, that they eventually either hired a private company, like a private limo company, or they had their own basically service where they gave players and was just like, hey, we don't want to know what you're doing out at 2:30 in the morning, but if you are under the influence or are drinking, no questions asked, call this number. They'll come pick you up and take you home safely, because we don't want any issues. We don't want any manslaughters. We don't want any DUIs. We don't want to risk the reputation of our brand. And that's something that they'd set up. I don't know if that's a thing every team or organization has set up, but I know back then, at least, I think the Rams had set it up, and then they also, I think, had worked with the Cardinals on it. So I'm like wondering what else they have that's kind of like, hey, in a bad situation like this, how do we get out of it? Like, almost like a cleaner aspect.
I don't know where I stand on that, because like your personal life should be like your thing. You should have some sort of training, but it's also that I feel like there should be a separation between your job. You come to work, and then
like separation between church and state.
On the side.
Of course, there's a separation, but I have to prepare you for success, not for failure. So if I'm running a team, we're having that conversation very, very early. And I'm having it if I'm the skipper. I'm having it if I'm the captain. I'm having it if I'm the senior guy on the team. I'm having it if I'm the GM.
I do think there's probably tiers of teaching this stuff.
It's got to be like Antoine Walker.
Or even like an age group thing.
We're having a cigar with him.
Oh God, this
And
is
Antoine
crazy.
Walker, career earnings. Can you type up what Antoine Walker's career earnings are? Just type in Antoine Walker.
This is a crazy
career
story.
Earnings. I think he made $113 million, $114 million, $108 million. Okay, so he made good amount of money. Got nothing. What happened? He says, one time I was hanging out with Michael, and Michael's playing $100,000 hands or whatever the number was. So
Gambling in sports, it's very dangerous.
$100,000 hands. Shit, I realized I can't play $100,000 hands. I'm not at Michael's level of money, right? So what happened to him? He lost everything. Who signed him? Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter signed him. What did they do with Antoine Walker with Morgan? I think Morgan Stanley signed him. Can you type in Antoine Walker, Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter? Morgan Stanley signed him, and him and Morgan Stanley worked together to talk to players that were coming to the league on how to manage their finances.
I didn't know this story, but this is
and
great.
what to do with mistakes to make, and don't do this and don't do that, and be careful. Yeah, right there. Morgan Stanley, Global Sports Entertainment, teams up with former professional athletes, Antoine Walker being one of them, Bart Scott.
I like what he's about to
and
transition
real-life
into.
lessons of athletes. So then athletes are like, say, so managers are going to come and do this. The other day, Matt Rife, the comedian, you know Matt Rife,
Yep.
the guy that's going viral? He says he got a phone call from Dave Chappelle. He says, he saved me $750,000 because I had a lawyer that I was paying 5% on every deal I was doing. And Chappelle told me, no, talk to this guy. He'll do it for $5,000. It's not a big deal. He said, Chappelle saved me $750,000 just by telling me right there, just by telling me, how long is this clip, Rob?
I was going to say that
Yeah, can you just play it?
I love how you can just hop on YouTube and find these.
What's the best piece of advice he's given you?
He saved me $750,000 on a lawyer. They wanted us to go with this 5% lawyer, which would have been $750,000 for a
$15
certain
million
deal.
deal.
And he was like, nah, I've got a guy who'll do it hourly. Cost me a couple grand.
He saved
Okay, you can pause it right there.
$750,000.
So you know, Chappelle's playing a role of a mentor.
Yep.
I think baseball's got to also be talking to each other and kind of, and maybe they are, and I'm not speculating. I don't know. You're telling me they don't do it.
I don't think baseball does. I think teams do this stuff based on who they have, but I think baseball should step up and provide this. Like I know, again, I'm a Cardinals guy, obviously, but like I know they have like mentors that come back and talk about these stuff. Like the Mets, I feel like they should have like Darryl Strawberry or somebody like that that's like had a life, had success in the game. Maybe it was cut short, whatever. Like they should have players like that. That I feel like are capable of coming and talking to the youth and relating to them and telling them their story and telling them what could go wrong. Like, I do think baseball should, maybe they are, and I'm not aware, but I do think they should step up and find players like that, build these programs, especially as the area of like sports psychology has grown so much, and contributing to, the success of athletes, yips being a thing that they didn't really know how to treat back in the day during the Rick Ankiel era. And now I feel like every team's got a couple of sports psychologists just to help with the frame of minds. Because, I mean, you're top tier athletes, but you struggle with failure. Everybody
That would be
does.
the one thing I would do as an owner, because it's a new target. DM is a new target. You're a new target.
Yep.
They're coming after you. But I still want to be able to
Taking my
use your
shoes off.
antics.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As long as we create a certain set of criteria.
Get
to
comfy.
say, I don't care if you create content. Here's a couple things. Don't leak secret stuff that we're doing internally, because if the skipper that can't
Oh,
trust
yeah,
you,
for
then
sure.
he's not going to share everything that they're doing strategically because you're talking too much. Don't disrespect management and the team, and don't hurt yourself.
Yeah.
As long as you follow those three basic criteria, okay, go, dude, create controversy. Talk about others and do
Yeah,
that kind of
that's
stuff.
again, that's one of those
Maybe,
things that I think you
I don't know
could
if
define in a
baseball,
contract.
I think baseball's filled with a lot of conservatives.
Who's the one GM that can get creative and get ownership's blessing to actually do something like that? That's I think some of like, I almost feel like you would have to go to like the Mets, although New York wouldn't be the best environment, because I think Stearns would be creative enough, and then what's his face, the billionaire that just bought the team, I think he's ballsy enough and knows enough, like business savvy enough to handle Bauer and to handle the risk assessment. And then, yeah, like I said, I think Stearns, the new GM, I think he could be creative enough to define the terms that are acceptable. And then they'll also both be happy the fact that he'd signed for the minimum.
And politically, that may be vote for Trump, but I don't know if many of them are vocal about it.
But you'd have to have the combo
So
of the right
there's
owner
a-
with the
there's a-
creative GM in order to
Baseball
make
probably
this
has more
happen, I feel like.
conservatives than any other of the NFL and NBA it has more, but they're low-key about it. They're quiet about it. Some of them are the biggest superstars.
I think the Red
Absolutely.
Sox could pull it
No one
off.
knows about it. They keep it to themselves. Maybe that's because they don't want to lose the opposition of audience or something like that. Okay, totally. I don't have a problem with that, but I understand why they would say that. But those would be my criterias when I'm paying somebody $100 some million over a 3-year period, $40 million a year. I got to protect my investment.
Yeah, no doubt.
And it's interesting. There's, I don't want to use the word hypocrisy, but baseball's been very, very slow. And they always give themselves the excuse, oh, it's colorful characters, right? You've probably heard it described as that. It's like a code word in baseball. I don't know if the players of your generation remember anything about Bill Veeck, the owner of the White Sox, like read any of the history.
Bill Veeck.
Bill Veeck.
Name sounds familiar.
Disco Demolition Night.
Oh,
an album.
That was wild.
Disco music to a doubleheader. And at the break between the doubleheader, they were going to take all these albums and blow them up in center field until the fans got a little ripped because this is a doubleheader and apparently it was warm and
a lot of
beer
beer flowing.
And Budweiser and baseball will go back many generations.
Yeah, that was a wild day.
And Disco Demolition Night became a disaster as the albums were thrown on the field and the second half of the doubleheader was canceled. That was not.
The field was burned.
Emotional event, 98
Or groundskeeping.
The game with a disco record discounted admission for teenagers. This is July 12, 1979.
Sneaked in after capacity was reached. Oh my God!
Kids to come in with their mom and dad, and so we called Bill Veeck. And have you ever seen the pictures of the Chicago White Sox that were in softball shorts, like the?
There was it's either a 2 or 3 part series of the old, whatever, I can't remember what it's called. I went to it once, I think, when I was, where the White Sox used to play. Basically, there's like a history of how the ballpark used to be run. I think the organ player, some of the clubhouse issues or whatnot. They talk about this disco. They talked about different fun promotions. Like I think he's about to say where they had like them wear shorts. I think they had one promotion where like women could get in if they wore shorts or something and not a skirt. Something, I don't know, because they were just trying to think of anything that could get people in like their. Like, men were going to show up regardless kind of thing. But they wanted to get women there, too, so they would think of things to get women there. Kids are kind of like, whatever. Like, all right, family night, that's the way to get kids, whatever. But, yeah, there's a couple of interesting promotions that the White Sox used to do back in the day that... Now, you think of it now, and you're like, that could never work now. Like, so the disco thing, burning records, a shorts night, I think that's ridiculous, but...
They were light blue.
Nowadays, everybody would be offended by something. So
what was he trying to do? He was trying to bring younger people to the ballpark. There they are. There's Mark. Is that the bird? Mark Fidrich?
Looks like him, yeah.
Probably. By the way, somebody who was
looks like a
experimenting
softball
as you
league
were, with finger position and things like that, and trying to do it. So baseball needs to look back and see that in its heritage, there have been people that have tried to bring more people to the ballpark, try to bring a little controversy. Now, Disco Demolition Night wasn't supposed to end with a forfeiture and a cancellation of the second game, which made the bullpen happy because, they're all coming out, oh, man, I got to throw again?
Yeah.
Are we serious here? And Bill Veeck. And he tried to bring so much to it. And so baseball's had its colorful characters, but they tends to hand wave, Pat, and just let them go away as colorful characters. But they were trying to bring more to the game, bring an excitement to the game. And I give credit to Reggie Jackson. There was a film I saw. Reggie Jackson turns...
That's why I have these books.
Can you not interrupt me here?
That I need to read.
An interview, and you need to not interrupt me.
Or random trivial stories that people don't talk about anymore. Because they're...
He said, listen...
I don't know. Unique, different, not accepted anymore.
Families and with their other kids coming here. I'm speaking love over here. Leave me be. So he understood what he was trying to do there. And there was nothing salacious in that particular moment, Reggie Jackson, but he knew that what was his job? He was Mr. October. He was a candy bar. His job was bring more.
And by the way,
in.
he was a controversial, like a little bit of a troll himself.
He
tough
and Billy
guy.
Martin got into each other's grill.
I love it though. That's baseball. That's what you want to go to the next game to see what's going on.
As long as there's no like physical, it's like intensity's okay.
We get back to calming down, and now we worry about. Let's make the base bigger so we can have a tenth of a second more steals. Let's put a pitch clock so that we can get into an entertainment length. It's what they're looking at as movies. We got to stay under 2.5 hours. This has got to be. Look at an NBA game. 2 hours, 15 minutes. We got to get this into movie length. We got to get this. So they're worried about those things. That's why the pitch clock is here. That's why only too many mound visits. That's why the bases are bigger. And we've done these things to do that. So, and I feel like baseball's attacking some of the issues, but they're not like releasing people to be people and to be personalities, because it brings people in, not in such a way that would offend somebody or somebody saying something awful. But I think baseball needs to know
He says a lot of
that
good things.
heritage. There were people that were trying to do it, and they just let them go away and get back to calm old baseball.
I do think that's something that like MLB The Show has done a pretty good job of the last couple of years with their game, is that they're trying to, you know, promote the players and give the players time to show like who they are as people. So like that's why I thought Jazz was good, because like, you know, he's colorful, maybe not worthwhile of a cover, but like I got what they were doing. Vlad's another guy, like okay, he's got more talent, but you know, show his history, you know, show his relationship with his family, his dad. You know, there's a lot of stuff they can do there. And like these guys aren't just like cover athletes and then that's it. Like they will contribute throughout the year. And I think that's great. And even like them doing the stuff with the Negro Leagues the last couple of years, like so they have new people this year. They started last year. I think that's a great way to kind of like bring your new fans and get them invested in some of the history or like what it used to be like that they were never going to experience. Because, you know, I think they've done a great job with the video game, but I almost feel like MLB should take some notes.
Yeah, I think the MLB's done a decent job of trying some new initiatives, trying to shorten the game to appeal to more people. They've tried to bring in some social influencers in different markets. So you mentioned.
I will say some teams, when it comes to the hype videos, promotions, their Twitter pages, some of them are great, and then there's others that like you don't like. I think the Athletics right now are basically silent because everything's just kind of negative and they don't have anything to say. So I don't know if it's the acted. They just don't say anything. I know I've heard a lot of good things about the Rockies. I guess are very entertaining. I know the Cardinals do, I feel like, a pretty good job, but I kind of follow a lot of their like broadcasters and journalists in the area, so I feel like sometimes I kind of combine them. But yeah, there's certain organizations that do a great job, and then there's others that like do the minimum and barely promote their league or promote their players at all.
Mentioned earlier, building a bridge to a different market with the Super Bowl and Taylor Swift. Baseball's trying to do that with some of their like content. I forget what it's called, the MLB Creator Program or something. I'm probably getting the name wrong. But they're trying some things, and that's a positive. I think the biggest thing that you can do is create storylines. Like you have to have storylines. People will care about. People will tune in to watch a story. They'll tune in to watch two guys fight that they really trust and believe hate.
Whoa, what is this? I don't remember this. There's a creator class. Catching our attention, be creative, and show your personality with... Oh, come on, man. Why's it gotta be TikTok? I'm like, there is a niche. This is the major niche that people don't really do a lot of. There's some people that have taken off or like have teams, but like in terms of like live streaming, there's not much out there, to be honest.
Hate each other. It doesn't matter if they actually hate each other or not, but if the audience thinks that they do, they'll tune in to watch. People will watch a 3-hour baseball game if they think Red Sox Yankees there might be a brawl. I really want to see this matchup of the starting pitcher, and you know I want to see Clemens face Piazza and after the World Series and the bat issue, and I want to see those things. I want to see Rougned Odor and Bautista. When is the next time those two teams are going to play? What's going to happen? People will tune in and watch the entire game if there's enough of a storyline there. So that's what I was trying to. Last time I was playing, that's what I was trying to do, is create some micro storylines. Like leading into my start, I only pitch every 5th or 6th day, so I can't do it every single game. But like leading into my start, what's the storyline going into it? Is there a rivalry with another team? Is it a rivalry with their players? Is it?
I'm gonna have to start hashtagging everything. MLB Creator Class.
During a game, like
see if I get noticed.
Those types of things need to happen more, and I think that that's one thing that's like really missing. Is how do you train players to develop those storylines while at the same time avoiding the controversial stuff that's going to be seen as like a negative for the league.
Do they want athletes creating content or no? Is it a environment where it's like, hey, we do want, like, Draymond's right now doing a podcast.
I think their problem is they want everything to be on the field. They don't want like WWE writers coming in and building up some program where it's Bregman versus Scherzer. They don't want to do that entertainment thing and take away from the actual game. But they haven't found that sweet line of you gotta kind of have to do both.
or you got a couple players that in the NBA are doing a podcast. Even Parsons, right, from what do you call it, Cowboys? What's his name? The linebacker.
Michael Parsons.
He's freaking awesome. By the way, what a great communicator the guy is.
And a sack machine. He's a great player and a communicator and a personality.
But I think he is even a better, I don't know if I can say that because he's that good of a player, but he's a ridiculous personality, right? So what is it doing? Oh, so you said this, and here's what we're going to do. You think I'm going to do this? You want to say something? Wait till you see what happens when we face each other. I can't wait for the game.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the game. I'm like, hell yeah. Let's see what's going to happen.
Now I want to listen to this. I don't even like football anymore.
So I think there's an element that
college football.
And by the way, it's a little risky because Draymond could say anything, right? Because he's a little risky as well. Like, Draymond is a good example to use. The other day he hit Anthony Davis in the face, and he's like, no, I didn't. He hit him in the face. It was he hit him not intentionally. He was trying to get the ball, but it still hit Davis in the face. But there's eyeballs still that's coming with that. Like, for me, if I watch highlights of baseball, you kind of mentioned a few of them, or basketball, I like to watch a little bit of,
I actually would love to sit down in a room with, like, I don't know, the MLB PR team, or if they had a creator team or whatever. I would love to actually sit down and be like, all right, let's brainstorm some ideas, and hear them say, like, no, we don't want this. This is why. And then see if that could, like, we're like, we like this, we want more of this, but we don't know how to make it. Like, I would love to sit in that little session and see what, like, we could enable out of each other.
Wallace Ron Artest, okay, back in the days, if you know which one I'm talking about.
Oh, God.
Detroit, I want to watch,
Bad boys,
Charles
bad
Barkley
boys.
picking up Shaq. I want to watch Larry Bird being held back like this by Moses Malone while Julius Erving is going like this. I want to watch, Shaq against who was the Detroit Pistons player that he hit in the face his rookie season. I want to see crazy stuff like that. And you're not, like, right now, the NBA doesn't play defense. Everybody's averaging 140 points a game. No one gives a shit about that kind of a game. There is no feistiness. Everybody's friends. I don't care to watch it. There is no.
Yeah, I've lost complete interest in the NBA.
That they have any kind of we want to beat those guys. Even last week with Stephen A., he says the sport is missing the antagonism, the agitation. That's what made it exciting. It doesn't have any of that right now. Matter of fact, that made
Bring Dennis Rodman back.
Softer and softer and softer. The smallest thing, you look away, they give you a technical foul. It's the softest league right now with referees we got in the NBA. And NFL is having some record-breaking numbers right now. Some of it could be Taylor Swift. Some of it is the fact that competition is just really, really good, and Mahomes is an exciting guy to watch and doing what he's doing. But to me, with the MLB, I wonder if they were to bring a social media strategist, somebody from the industry that knows what, like the CMO from, I don't know, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, whichever one of these guys that knows what they're doing, bring them in. And then bring a Gartner in, or a consulting firm, somebody that knows the data and YouTube and content, and bring a McKinsey in, bring a BCG in, right? And say, hey, what do you think about, and you don't even tell the players about it, what do you think about us doing this? Is this a good strategy or not? If we go bring guys like Bauer that are bringing this attention, what markets are we not in that we can bring in? Spend $4 or $5 million on consulting firms. And maybe they're already doing this. Spend $4 or $5 million on consulting firms and bring these CMOs from these big firms to do partnerships with, and tell them, hey, if you do this, we'll do this for you. You can broker a deal for them. And then they could come back and say, if you did get into this audience, your viewership could go from, Rob, can you pull up the NFL viewership against all the other teams that I asked you to pull up? So here's the numbers. That's NFL to the left, killing everybody at 947, number of viewers per year. Is what we're talking about. We got MLB, and by the way, NFL plays 17 games. MLB plays, I think, 162. NBA is 82, and then NHL, I think, is also 82. I don't know exactly how many games NHL plays, but 16 games is getting that. What can we do with MLB to take that 329 to 500? What can we take you to 600? So watch this now. Watch this now. Somebody who's watching this, who's a player, let's just say some players are watching this. What happens if MLB is at 500 million? You know what that means if it's at 500 million? That means contracts go up 25%.
It's a revenue share percentage of total revenue.
That's
You're right. You're right.
Go up, we all win.
30% contract goes up. That means if you're making 40 a year, now you mean I'm going to get paid 55 a year. You saw what Otani got paid the $2 million over 10 years and then $68 million the other. But it's really a 10 over 700 over 10, right? $70 million a year type of contract he got.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What if we can take that to $100 million a year? What if we get the first $1 billion contract? So players ought to be excited about others that can bring different, unique eyeballs to do it. And I totally get you got to do it in a way where you don't use your existing audience. Like, we can't just go bring, half-naked girls and, hey, here's what we're going to do. But the family people left. Oh, shit, that didn't work out because the hot dogs you want to have with your son, yeah, that was a terrible idea. I also understand that optics. But I think there's strategy on getting a guy like you that entice a guy like me to be like, what's he going to say today? What's he going to do today? I'm curious.
Yeah.
People were following.
Yeah, for sure. I think the landscape of baseball is a little bit difficult because you travel so much, you play every single day. So the time when it's best to produce content is when you're the busiest. In the off season, people don't care as much about content unless you start backlogging to release in the middle of the season.
And I mean, he does it, so he knows.
Find a way to make
he's got a successful YouTube channel.
Easy for players. You have to find a way to make the distribution of that, the filming, the creation of it easy for players. But you have to find a way to make it entertaining at the same time, and that's the bridge that they're trying to cross right now. A lot of players in season don't want to do the extra interview. They don't.
For him specifically, but like, I think something that they easily could do is if they set up a small little team of, go out and find your little MLB content creators from each team, get a host, get an editor, get a videographer. Like, you already have these guys that are basically at the ballpark interning for free, or already involved in the promotions when they're throwing the jerseys or whatever. Have a couple of these people, add, whether you want to get them a specific team or add other people a little extra responsibilities. Find out which players on each team have that good personality, want to be on camera, and then have your little like weekly television show, or like every homestead, like you have a couple of shows, that during that week. And then just discuss like whatever's going on either in the game currently or what's going on social media. What are the hot topics? What's the new video game coming out? Blah, blah, blah. I think even little things like that, like if it's a 20, 30-minute thing of them talking to players and like, or have little kids asking players questions, like that stuff's gonna do well. I don't know why they don't do that stuff. It works in game. When they have that stuff on the scoreboard, people are entertained. Why aren't they releasing some of that stuff on YouTube's or on MLB or whatever?
Want to do an hour, shoot in the morning because they're sleeping in, trying to recover, trying to get ready for the game. NBA, you have a lot more time in between games to be able to do that. You have a practice 2 or 3 days in a row, then a game. You have an afternoon to be able to do some stuff. NFL, you have some time to be able to do stuff. You've seen, I think, the Chiefs this year, there's been a lot of off-field, a lot of stuff. There's more time. Baseball is tough because
pitchers could do it because you're doing it every 5,
absolutely
6 days,
could.
Pitchers would be great for it.
Yeah. That's a good point. I can see that, but still,
like Wainwright would have been amazing.
There's ways to do it.
Michaelis is hilarious. He'd be great for the Cardinals.
I was able to even look at what Pat McAfee does. Right, he brings the existing players in, and Aaron Rodgers comes in. Is this guy going to come back and play this season? And what's going to happen? Like, oh my God, is Aaron going to come back for the Jets? It's going to be the fastest recovery all time. There's an element of that that's bringing in, a certain set of eyeballs, because what you also don't want to do, I also don't want to change you.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I don't want McAfee to change.
Yeah.
Who's the other kicker in football that's got the sick physique? Weatherford, who is a...
I don't know what you're talking about.
He looks like he's a bodybuilder.
I know they could do Lorenzen. If a team would give him sign him somewhere. That dude's a fitness freak. Another thing, back to what I was saying with the team stuff, you have ex-players that like the organization hires, or at least some do, that they have their own shows, or they're the ones that go interview the current players. Like Ozzie Smith does a great job. And then like he's got his own little, like he's basically the host. He'll ask the questions, but he basically has his own team to like, shoot stuff, put extra little skits together or whatever. I think he does a great job. I think he thoroughly enjoys it. And then they always have like the fan interactions as well, where it's like, hey, ask Ozzie Smith a question. Like, and then like the Cardinals released that stuff, and I don't know if it does well on the videos. Probably not in comparison to like other NFL content or whatever. But like, if they push this stuff right, or even release them on a more regular basis, because I feel like they do them like once a month, it would do a lot better. But I don't know if other teams are actually releasing these things at all.
Yeah, I've had conversations with him. He's
talking about Greg Zerline?
No, I'm talking about Weatherford. No, I'm talking Steve Weatherford. I said his last name correctly. That Weatherford right there, Steve Weatherford. Okay, the guy.
Damn, he ripped.
If you go to his Instagram account right now, you won't even believe what the guy looks like. It doesn't make any sense what he looks like. Yeah, go to his Instagram.
He's 41.
This is a human specimen. Who this guy is. And by the way, when you see him face to face, okay, go on. Yeah, he's talking about how Weatherford tackled him. Right there. That's a human specimen. This guy was a kid.
That's a house.
Okay, now he's a content creator.
Looks like a linebacker.
Stop it right there. The guy's got a stretching routine that he teaches that's phenomenal. I don't want to change you. By the way, I don't care if you're a Republican. Because if I knew how to use you, that you're a Republican, and then there's something else coming up, and this other guy's a Obama or this, there's a way. That's a storyline. Are you kidding me?
Look
That's
what Colby's brought to MMA. Like, he's really leaned into that.
Of course.
And there's tons of eyeballs.
Yes.
Now, he goes in there and fights someone, and there's resolution to that, right?
Yeah.
But it's just the storyline of it. You connect with like a full half of your demographic, where other guys might connect with the full half of the other half of the demographic.
So now all of a sudden they're like, hey, Donald Trump shows up to a game.
I was gonna say, I don't know who this
What do you
is.
mean Donald
I
Trump
don't
showed up? Yeah, he showed
know
up
much
to a
about
game.
fighting.
And then, okay, so now the other side. Then Joe Biden shows up to a game. And then, well, Barack
But
Obama
damn, he's like
shows
my
up to a
age.
game. And then Bush shows up to a game. Now it's like, oh, wow, who's going to show up to the next game? I think there's an element of that where you can bring an audience that there's a lot of conservative families that love baseball. I would say the biggest conservative fan base of any sport is probably baseball, more than NFL and more than, NBA. So how do you tap into that and tap into it in a way where, you're not offending and you're allowing, and then the commission has to come out and say, look, I don't mean to say anything that's going to offend anybody. Republicans love baseball. Democrats love baseball. Trump fans love baseball. Obama fans love baseball. We have Cubans who come from a communist nation. Communist loves baseball. Socialists love baseball. Baseball doesn't care about your politics. Baseball is the most unique game in the world because it's fun, it's spiritual, it's this. But we welcome whites, blacks. We're the most diverse sport out of all of them. I would be selling that.
Yeah.
I would be selling the.
That's why the World Baseball Classic is
I
such a
think
hit.
Baseball is the most diverse
Absolutely.
nationality league. But do you know who talks about that? I've never heard about that.
No.
I don't hear that being sold.
There's, at any given time in a clubhouse, you might be sitting next to people from 6 to 10 different countries.
Sick. I love it.
Yeah.
I do love that about baseball, and I almost wish that MLB would partner with some of these other bigger, well-known leagues. So, like the one that he just went to, I know it was KBO's got one. I don't know what the Nippon one. I think is the Japan one. I'm not sure. There's a Mexican league in there somewhere. There's got to be another one in the DR or something. Maybe they can't get like the cable like to watch them live or anything like that. But like, how come we don't see any of these highlights of some of these players? Like, I would love for MLB's as a corporation to somehow incorporate that stuff into the website where it's like, hey, like we have our international prospects, but here's some of the international scores. Here's some of the international stories. Like, I think that would be amazing and be so helpful, because like when you sign some of these like studs from international, like, yeah, your scouts might have known for a couple of years. Maybe the owners are aware, whatever. But when the Braves sign Acuna or, the White Sox sign Luis Robert or Robert, however you say it, I want to know more about him other than like, okay, I can look at his tools. He's potentially, okay, like a 70 grade, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, it's basically I can read him on paper, but I want to know him. I want to see some highlights and see some clips and make my own judgments. I want to know like his Instagram handle so I can see he's got a sexy girlfriend or something. Like, I want them to incorporate that stuff more internationally.
Australia, Germany, Japan, Korea, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Dominican, Brazil. You just keep going down the list.
Henley was from Curacao. Most people couldn't spell it or point where it was on a map.
Exactly. Yeah. But you'll have all those players sitting next to each other in a clubhouse, getting along, fighting for a World Series, a common goal, coming together, bridging all the different cultures and the communication gaps and everything, finding ways to communicate. I was with Jose Ramirez in Cleveland, and he's one of my favorite teammates.
I do hope that with the Netflix stuff with the Red Sox, I do hope they incorporate some of this stuff. I think it'll be a very telling what they allow and don't allow in this series as to how well this is going to be received and how well it's going to be pushed to do a season 2, 3.
I've ever had. We couldn't speak very well. He learned more English as time went along, but we couldn't communicate very well. But we found ways of like, you know, body language and stuff like that. And we'd actually like talk to each other in that way all the time. He's one of my favorite guys. You have those moments. I think that's an important thing to show, but people don't get to see those things because there's no documentation of it. You know, the show Hard Knocks. Imagine the New York Yankees have a Hard Knocks type show that goes all season. Like, what does that bring? What kind of fan engagement does that bring to that organization? Now, you produce it in-house. You don't show the technical.
See, what was funny was I think this interview had come out. I mean, I don't know who had it first. I'm sure it wasn't Bauer, but I saw this interview. He mentioned this, and I was like, that actually would be so fun. And then, like, I feel like a week later, the Netflix thing came out that they were doing the Red Sox. So I was like, oh, okay, good timing.
Technical stuff, you know, the scouting, the exact numbers. But you show the players. What are they coming to the stadium wearing? What are they doing off the field? What are those interactions in the clubhouse? Film it. Have your PR people, have your media people screen everything, and then cut the players in on the performance of it. Find a distribution network, a Netflix, put it on YouTube, whatever the distribution strategy is. Cut the players in on it. The more that they're involved, the better the show does, the more money they get paid. And run it at even or a loss as a marketing thing. You just go spend a bunch of marketing on Yankees, Reds, whatever the team is every year anyway.
I almost wonder if maybe Bauer said this to Manfred, and Manfred was like, we should do that.
What kind of fan engagement? I mean, you've been doing the YouTube game for long enough. You can see the number of views that you generate. You can see the number of views that guys like Mr. Beast are generating and the enterprise value that creates. Mr. Beast advertisement is more lucrative, more valuable than a Super Bowl ad. And he's putting a video up every single week, or every 2 weeks or whatever it is. Like, what is the value that could be had there by delivering that type of content, something that's so unique that no one else is doing to an audience? Like, I don't know what the numbers would be, but the impact on the game would be astronomical. If you could see what Aaron Judge was doing week in, week out, preparing for this upcoming game, if you could see the unfiltered conversations, clean, however you want to structure your brand, that's fine. But some of the unfiltered conversations in the clubhouse. I had a conversation with Mookie Betts when I was in L.A. And I love Mookie. He's one of my favorite guys.
Here's actually a good example for this situation, because like you said, you kind of have to filter things out. I would love to have a camera crew, and again, this would probably be a year behind, so whatever. I wish it would be more live, but I would love to have a camera crew or somebody in there right now in all these dugouts for spring training, getting their opinion. Like, we're seeing some of it, but getting their opinions in clubhouse as they're trying on these Fanatics Nike jerseys. Oh, it's a little tight here. Oh my God, dude, you can see my banana boxers through these pants because they're so thin. I want that stuff now. I want those clips now. Like, we'll see little tweets here and there, but like, you know, I always take those things with a grain of salt because I'm like, okay, well, are they serious? Are they actually mad? Are they joking? Are they like frustrated but know it'll get better and understand? Like, there's a lot of that subtext that you're missing, or like it's less poignant if I can't see who says it, and it's out of this blah blah blah, and then like they've said like, okay, well, like Nolan Arenado's the Nikes, he signed a contract with Nike, so he would be the guy that if he said something in the clubhouse, like, man, these things suck. Man, these things are too tight. Oh, these are see-through. Oh, these are scratchy. Well, then he would be like, hey, guys, you can't say that. That's going to get me in trouble with my contract with Nike, blah, blah, blah. They'd be like, okay, cut you out. Nothing was said. Like, that would be a good situation in parallel to, like, kind of what he's saying.
Great player, great teammate. Love him. We got in an argument one day over who would win if the pitchers had to hit and play defense and the position players had to pitch. Like, who would win? And we went on. We had everyone in the clubhouse We had the manager, we had everyone that was walking in, and I had just set my vlog camera up there. And it was a one angle. You couldn't see half the people on the screen, but it was one of the most engaging moments of my vlog because people are like, oh, this is what goes on in a clubhouse. These are the types of conversations.
There are some silly ass combos in Clubhouse that people would love.
That week in, week out, day in, day out.
Especially for those that never got to experience that type of thing.
That'd be incredible. Where is that?
By the way, it shows.
Honestly, that's some of the stuff that I miss the most about not playing or coaching anymore. Are the silly, stupid conversations or like the lighthearted pranks that you pull on one another when things get boring and dull. Like those are the things that kind of carry you through the season because you like it's something you might not think of, and then suddenly someone else is quiet and mentions a topic, and you're just like, oh, well that's interesting, and like. Or like, oh, wow, it came from them. They might have put some real thought into this, so I should put some real thought into it as well. Like, that's the type of stuff that I miss in the clubhouse or the dugouts or on the buses.
Amazingly, when you have 13-inning games and you run through, right before you came to the Dodgers, Russell Martin pitched a complete half inning.
Yeah.
And he's the catcher, Pat. We were out of everything. We're like in the 14th inning. There's nobody left. There's like 2 starters left. We're not going to use them. We can't get them stretched out because we need them tomorrow and the next day. And so Russell Martin comes in and pitches a half inning.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, what did Russell Martin think going into that moment? How did he prepare for it?
It was on Sports Center, and it was ahead of Web Gems.
Yeah.
Everybody was like,
I love Web
Russell
Gems.
Martin, if you don't know,
Bring Web Gems back.
55's coming into pitch. That doesn't happen in LA.
Yeah.
The only time he comes to the mound is when he walks to it from the plate.
Yeah. Well, there's a storyline there, right? Like, where's the follow-up to it? Like, I want to know what he was thinking. Hey, when you, like, break down this...
I want to know how his arm felt the next day.
Pitches, like, why did you throw this? Like, there's a lot of things that you can play off that with that would make it very easy for him to produce content if the next day he comes
or think of like the All-Star games when they have them mic'd up. Those are always the best.
Social clips, put it out there. Like, where is that?
Or like they'll do that in spring training sometimes too.
And Adrian Gonzalez pointing at him and going, you? And you can see him, he was saying you, and when he walked up to the plate.
I would be so interested in that. Listen.
Look what it did for F1, Drive to Survive.
So
Drive to Survive
That's
blew F1 up. How many millions of dollars has that single show created for F1 in the American market?
And it doesn't cover the races. It covers the conflict and the
Yeah.
personality.
They hardly show the races. And then you build superstars. People didn't know it.
I've never seen this show, but I have heard several things of how good it is and blah, 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 and how it's basically just the people and not really the actual racing. And I was like, oh, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know who to root for. And they're like, it doesn't really matter because it's about the people. And I was like, really? Like, who cracked that formula? And they're like, it's great. It's great. You got to watch it.
People in the States didn't know who Daniel Ricciardo was. Now they love him. People didn't know Gunther Steiner. Now they love him. Like, Gunther Steiner was like one of Haas's biggest stars, bringing in sponsorships, millions of dollars of sponsorships because he was a Drive to Survive star. Like, what kind of value does that create for an organization? You build one superstar. Like, look at Ohtani. Like, the Dodgers just paid $700 million to acquire Ohtani. That was not he's just worth this, we'll pay it and we'll take a loss. That's a calculated decision. They assessed that number and said, over the lifetime of this contract in the Asian market, in U.S. market, in jersey sales, in media and stuff like that, we're going to make more than this $700 million. We're going to have our margins. We're going to be able that's a business decision. So if one player, now Ohtani's a freak. He's a superstar, probably the most talented guy ever to play the game in the history of it. Like, if one guy can bring in over $700 million,
multiple
what is
countries,
the value of building a superstar? Look at what Conor McGregor did. Look at what Michael Jordan did. Look at Tom Brady. Like, what is the value of Tom Brady to the NFL over 20 years?
Where's my Freakonomics economics professor guys? I would love to bring them in on some sports topics like this because they would find a way to break it down in easy, digestible things and be like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, why don't they do that? Like, they're so good at that stuff.
What is the superstar creating machine? What's the engine that's going on in MLB? UFC is like the gold standard of this. They create new superstars all the time. Like, if you go back UFC 5 years ago, you have like John Jones, and you have Conor McGregor, you have the Diaz brothers, you have a couple select superstars. Ronda. You have the UFC today is bigger than it has ever been, and those people aren't fighting. How? Like, they've created new superstars. They have a machine. They have UFC embedded. They have Contender Series. They have Ultimate Fighter. They have this engine to build superstars and to build valuable assets with their athletes.
Can you do me a favor, Rob?
I guess light bulb. If that's true, I mean, I don't know much about it, but I get the general gist. If you know, in the way that we've gotten so good at like scouting prospects or college, I mean, college would be different. So if you had a way, and I think you could, to somehow do this like with the, what was it, like QB1, I think was on Netflix with like high school kids that were going to be top prospects or whatever or top recruits. Why don't you do something similar with players that are in the top 50 and you kind of follow them around for the season? Or maybe maybe you get lucky with like, if you're with the O's and you have like 3 of them that are in the top 50, follow those guys around for a year, allow the audience kind of to see how much of a grind the minor leagues are, or reveal some of their personalities. I mean, they're still young kids, so they'll still make mistakes, but you also will get to like see things for the first time as they're seeing it or doing it for the first time or the second time or whatever. I think that would be so freaking entertaining. And I would love to see that. And especially for like the minor league players, like maybe you don't get all the round 3, top guys that have good signing bonuses. Maybe one of these guys, and this would probably be the best story of them all, if you had a guy that sounded in like the 13th round, but then he improves, gets better, suddenly he's a top 50 prospect. Well, he's not making much money. So you're telling me he wouldn't love to get a little slice of that paycheck? That'd be great for them as well. And then on the other angle too, you could also get like some of the players that sign internationally for more money or maybe not, and have them like, okay, maybe not the first year, and you definitely have to pick and choose the right one with languages and stuff like that as well. But like have them, so then you have a little bit of that international flair, and you have that, you're bringing in that market, somebody that they signed from the DR. Okay, now you have people from the DR tuning in. Maybe you have a translator, maybe you have a new prospect from Japan. Like, I think that would be so good for the game. And there would be a great way, I think there'd be, especially in the minors, as long as you don't show some of the scouting stuff or, some of all the like technological stuff, which, I mean, most of the time nobody is around the ballpark anyway, so you can get away with it. But like, I think there's a way you could do this and make it so interesting, so original. It would be great.
I wrote one word down, and he said it earlier. Go on YouTube. Let's just check this out. Go on YouTube and type in NFL, okay? And zoom in a little bit so we can see it as well. How many subscribers does NFL's YouTube channel have? Let's write this down. 12 and a half, okay?
This is...
NFL is at 12 and a half. Go to MLB.
5 point something, I think.
What is it? MLB is... Okay, 4.88. Okay, go to NBA. NBA is what? 21.3. Dominating everybody. Okay.
Wow.
Go to NHL.
I didn't think NBA would be that high.
2 million. Okay. Go to UFC.
I bet they blow everybody out.
17 and a half. Go to WWE.
Oh, no. Oh, WWE definitely does. But they build storylines. They post everything. Yeah.
So if I'm, and by the way,
they do a great job.
Sport is the fakest out of all the sports, right? I mean, we all know.
I mean that's
hopefully we know at this point.
That's the benefit, though. They can control the story.
It's like reality television.
Yeah, but guess what? I mean, there is a.
But they utilize it
in the entertainment market.
They capitalize on that stuff.
Creating controversy. WWE was all about creating the next fight, the next matchup, the next villain, the next enemy.
Yeah.
Who's the villain
the next rivalry?
In Major League Baseball right now. Who's the villain?
I was the biggest villain, I think, when I was playing.
But by the way, can you type in greatest villain of Major League Baseball? Who were the villains?
Now it's probably Manfred.
Well, it depends on who you're a fan of. If you're a Yankees fan, prior it was a Red Sox player.
Dude, I think just put like villain, biggest villains baseball. Who? Bryce Harper. Okay, guess what? I freaking love watching Bryce Harper. Yeah. Who else you got there as a villain?
Bucky effing Dent became a multi-generational statement. The Boston Red Sox would...
Why was Ichiro up there?
Bucky
that doesn't make sense.
Dent. He was such the villain because he hit the home run on that... It was a one-game playoff.
I could see like Ted Williams.
So he became this multi-generational
because I think he was kind of a dick.
symbol of defeat.
Okay.
He was their villain.
Let's see. Roger Clemens, totally get it. He's a villain.
Yeah.
A-Rod, yes. People love to hate him, okay? But guess what? The guy hit 690.
Yeah, Rocker was an asshole.
98 home runs. Yeah, I think he was short of.
AJ was very
700.
outspoken.
He always wanted to
Why he's
come
good
back and
on
do it.
YouTube.
Bonds, absolute villain. Rocker.
Sheffield's very outspoken.
Clearly remember him being a villain in the old Braves lineup.
Different reason.
Different reasons. Yeah, Sheffield, villain. I was going to say Joey Bell.
I feel like it's easy to
villain.
make
Can you go
closers the
show
villain.
more, or that's it. They got Chase Utley there. Yeah, to me, I think.
Chase Utley probably just because of that one slide.
Yeah, that's why I would never be a commissioner of Major League Baseball. Because if I was a commissioner of Major League Baseball, I would be front and center saying, look, I'm a little bit concerned because obviously the tensions are very high with the next game that's coming up.
We've gotten to for the benefit of the negative, I feel like we've gotten to statistics based, formula based. Like we've lost roles. Because I feel like even if you go back to like watch like Major League or Little Big League or whatever, who's the villain in those? It's either management, yes, I get that, or it was the closer, or like the huge big slugger that constantly screwed you over, or the big mustache guy that threw hard at the end, like the closer. Well, how many teams actually have a defined closer, and how many of them have like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a durable, like consistent stretch of them being a closer or even being on the team for that long. Like, I don't want to say free agency ruined anything because it didn't. It really kind of empowered the players' careers and such. But like, yeah, you don't even who's a villain closer nowadays? Is there any? I don't feel like there is. Like, cause even Edwin Diaz or whatever, like he's got a badass entrance. Ryan Helsley's got a badass entrance. Like they're all kind of playing the hero roles. They don't want bad guys or characters or stuff like that. But it does draw in your casual fans more and gives them like, oh, who do I root for? Who do I boo against? Like it gives them that guideline.
This is a competitive sport. These people have spent 30 years of their life working.
You don't know what's going to happen.
It's exactly
and then
it.
everybody has to tune in.
Yeah, and then you even create like we are fully prepared for it on what's going to happen. And we've talked to both teams. We're ready for all of it. Both teams want this championship. This is going to be a dogfight. It's probably going to be one that's going to be one of our most viewed. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And we understand. We have talked to, Trevor Bauer about some of his antics, and he is willing to listen to some of us. But again, Trevor is Trevor. We don't know what's going to happen when he goes to the mound. And on the other side, they've been told if Trevor pitches, so we want to bring the tensions down. We've talked to all the umps, but we're excited about this. The entire Major League Baseball is excited about this. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's got to be a little bit of that. And by the way, do kids watch UFC? Of course they do.
I don't even know who I'm facing in that scenario, and I'm excited for the game.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to be like, okay, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I know in most sports, commissioner's job is not like Dana White's job. Dana's a different kind of a commissioner. Dana's a boss, right? So you can't necessarily. Most Major League Baseball commissioners are unknown.
Yep.
The first time you ever heard the name Manfred is when what happened with Houston Astros. You're like, wait, what's the commissioner's name? Manfred is not going to do
Yeah, he's kind of right. They're not faces.
Are you kidding me? Boom. And then now you know. In basketball, you always knew David Stern because David Stern was kind of like Dana White.
Yeah.
Those guys.
If you look at when NBA really took off, that's when it was. That started the trajectory.
Yeah.
If you look at Dana White, that's what UFC is the fastest growing sport. Like it's blowing up worldwide too.
Yeah.
Like
every ethnicity likes it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have tension, storyline. You have to lean into that, and then you have to deliver that content to people where they are.
Now, let me ask this: any major superstars from MLB, have they reached out to you? You don't need to give names, but are you in conversation with major superstars, current and retired?
I've had a lot of conversation, players, coaches, staff, GMs, through this whole time, like privately behind the scenes. It's been a very supportive thing. It's really helped me a lot to know that like people in the game that I've interacted with, that I've been in the clubhouse with, that I've played for, that I've been around, like don't view me the way that
Right.
the public views me. So.
And so then the next thing is, because you told me about the Tom Glavine situation where Tom was like, I don't know if I'd want to play today with all the pressures of what's going on. You know the comments you
Yeah,
made.
he was very clear about that.
Yeah. So who are the most vocal superstars?
I feel like back then, even 20 years ago, and again, social media pressure or whatever. I feel like if you were Tom Glavine, you could go to the grocery store and you wouldn't necessarily get recognized. Like you'd get away with that and still have somewhat of a normal life, even though he's a freaking like super ultra talented Hall of Famer. Like you could have all right, my day job's I'm a professional athlete, whatever. But yeah, I could still go pick my kids up and it's not a big deal. Like I think in certain areas you still can be like that, but it's a lot harder nowadays than it was. So like he said with the pressure, I agree with him.
Stars that have defended you publicly.
Mookie probably.
Mookie?
Yeah.
Okay. Because when I think about the sport is filled with a lot of superstars that were redeemed themselves, right? And they were forgiven,
Yeah.
okay? It's filled with it all over the place. A-Rod is now maybe one of the best. I actually like to hear A-Rod's analysis. I think he's a very good teacher.
That transformation in as short of a time span went from being hated by basically everyone in baseball, and like 3 or 4 years later was calling like playoff games and
Yeah, that's
pretty much
crazy.
universally enjoyed.
Trusted color man. People are trusting the opinion, and in social media,
Yeah.
well, A-Rod says this, and he used to play, so
Yeah.
I buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, where's the angst?
Yeah, you guys used to hate him when he cheated.
And is now representing the league in like quick order, and the transformation's been incredible. He knows his stuff though. He's a generational
Oh my
talent.
God.
Like the amount of knowledge
Yeah.
he has, there's a lot of value
Yeah.
there, right?
I watch A-Rod give an
First round
analysis,
pick.
and I'm like, here's what I used to do. I used to put my glove in the freezer, and I used to do this and this is that. For this many years, this is what I always did. Why? And let me tell you why I would do it. Because it's kind of weird. And then I would put it down, and I would have this be on top of it. And then sometimes you got to choke the bat when it this, that. When I'm facing this person, this is the angle. Here's what I do my foot. When him and, by the way, it's always great when it's him, the couple clips with him and Pete Rose. And think about the two guys that are talking about
Pete Rose.
Both of them have a lot of controversy. I think both of them belong in the Hall of Fame, if you ask me. But again, I'm not Cooperstown, so it's not my decision to make. But look at them two, right?
That
Look
is
at
very
Michael
interesting.
Jordan took a break, came back. Okay.
I mean,
David Stern
is that not a way to be like, hey, we want controversy if you bring players like that back and to be color analysts and stuff like that? It's like, okay, yeah, they have their knowledge or whatever, but it's like there's plenty of other people that have knowledge as well, but don't have such a colored or checkered past. Like you're leaning into it a little bit. So
stood because Stern, took care of that guy, and he came back and, he brought a whole different lens to the league. Look at Bonds. Look at McGuire and Sosa, what those guys did to the league. Look at John Jones.
Yep.
Dana White, knowing the background John Jones has. Are you kidding me? Lawrence Taylor, okay? And think about NFL without an LT, right? Kobe Bryant. There's so many of these guys that we can talk about because, and Deshaun Watson, even he went through some things that he went through. Ray Lewis. I don't need to get into Ray Lewis antics and what stories. If you follow the game, you know what accusations were made of Ray Lewis. And then he changed himself, and he's got a different life. Mike Tyson is on that list, right? We've had Mike on multiple times. Dennis Rodman. Imagine the league without a Dennis Rodman. He was like one of the you never knew what he was going to do. It's like he got an open layup. He starts, waits for you to come score because he was refusing to score any points that game. He just wanted to get 28 rebounds and 0 points because he wanted to say, I can get 28 rebounds and 0 points while he's got a yellow hair. And in the interview, he's wearing some weird things. But guess what? You followed the game. What was going on?
and that was clips, and that was on the news.
the game is about redemption, forgiveness, and realizing everybody sins it in a different way. If the superstars, like the reason why I asked the question about superstars, I was in a former company, and a couple of the guys screwed up, and royally they screwed up, stupid screw up, right? Worse than yours, because yours is not what you did wasn't illegal. It's a choice that you and the girl made, and it's done. But this was actually a screw up. But they were good guys. They just did something very stupid. They deserve to get punished, but not deserve to get thrown out and losing their license for the rest of their lives. So I went and I sat down and I said, I talked to the individual first. We had a one-on-one conversation. And I said, you know what you did is stupid. Yes. You know what you did is selfish. You know you could have hurt other people. Yeah, I know. Do you fully get that? I totally get that. Okay. I think you're a good guy. I think what you did is dumb. And what are you willing to do, improve and change in this area? Okay. All right. And I feel like you're being real. I went and I spoke on their behalf behind closed doors to the league that I was a part of. Insurance is a very regulated industry. Financial industry is very regulated.
Really?
And these guys got second chances. What happened afterwards? They redeemed themselves. Now, obviously, you have guardrails.
I was like, please say they didn't fail again.
Like maybe you're double checking their policies that says submitting that you don't do like the other people, and you're double checking by calling clients and all this stuff. But guess what? They ended up becoming great, successful citizens, did very well. Company grew, they grew, everything good happened. I think, the biggest onus here I would put on superstars who have been through what you've been through. For some of these superstars to come out and say, look, guys, at least what I did was wrong, and I broke the law. This guy didn't break the law. He just did something stupid. You mean to tell me you weren't a superstar where, isn't there a reporter right now on Monday Night Football that there's videos of him saying what kind of girls he liked back in the days? Collinsworth, whatever his name is. There's videos circulating of this guy back in the days when he was...
Oh, yeah, Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah, Chris Collinsworth.
I believe it's Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah.
He was at University of Florida.
Yeah.
He came out. He was at the Cincinnati Bengals.
That's the interview all the way at the top. You just pulled it up right there.
Yeah. See, look how young he is.
Yeah.
And
I like girls that aren't too bright because you can trick them a little bit, okay? He says,
oh my God, look how old that is.
You know what he is right now?
The thing I hate about that stuff too is like, if people want to try to destroy you, they will try so hard and go so far back. It's like everybody says stupid things, whether they mean to or not. Maybe it's out of context, whatever. Like to bring them up 10, 15 years, 20, 30 years later, that's just ridiculous. Because if you're a growing person, you're not going to be the same person you were 2 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So, like, if there are certain things that maybe there's a pattern, okay, sure. And you could say this is, he's always believed this. Or maybe there's something that, like, completely counters what you once said. But it's all got to be within a certain timeline. You can't bring stuff up from 20 years ago and then be like, oh, he said this, let's cancel him. Like, no, dude, he's obviously changed. He's a different person now.
He's a grown man right now, probably embarrassed by saying something stupid like this that we've all said. Some of us weren't famous. We didn't say it on camera. We said it off camera. But the market's forgiven him, and he's one of the best guys on doing Monday Night Football. I think he does Monday Night or he does NFL. He does one of the two because Monday Night is Troy Aikman and the other guy. Again, I don't know which night he does, but he's very, very good at what he does. Chris Collinsworth, right?
Ex-player, smart, knows the game.
Yeah.
Said some crazy things when he was a kid, 79, 80, coming out of
We can't assume.
Who does
So long
Who
ago.
doesn't? So all I'm saying is these guys need to make the phone calls. That's what I'm saying. They got to make the phone calls.
I was like, what was your point
They
here?
got to reach out.
Some of them have.
Okay.
Some of them
Have they reached out to them? Not to you, to the league. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. And if that's the case, then at that point, some of the teams and leagues have to make a decision. Is this like the first year where it's like, hey, guys, I'm here, I'm available, if you're interested? Or have they had a chance to sign you for a few months and nothing's happened yet?
Yeah, once the Dodgers released me in early 2023, there was like a month, but where I was a free agent, could sign with anyone before I signed in Japan. But that was coming right off of the suspension and everything. I still had outstanding lawsuit and whatever. Now all that stuff's cleared. So yeah, this has been the first like kind of free agency after all the stuff.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's fresh. So something could happen. And is there a set profile of a certain teams that would be willing to take more of a risk on a guy like you than others?
I'm not sure.
Ooh, good question.
I would like to think that, I know on the field I can help any team. I think it makes a lot of sense for teams that are looking for starting pitching that are contending. You can sign me for, basically, you have to pay league minimum to someone to fill the roster spot anyway. League minimum plus incentives. You can get someone that could perform at a Cy Young level for, to bolster your team. I think that makes a lot of sense. But again, like I'm not in the position of an owner of a team. I've never been in those positions, so I don't know all the things that have to be considered. But I think a team like that, like a team like the Diamondbacks, let's say, I'm just pulling a team out, but went to the World Series last year, have a good young team. Someone like the Orioles, maybe a good young team, need a starting pitcher, need a veteran, need someone that's like been in the playoffs a lot.
Actually, the first team I thought of was the Orioles. I was like, well, but the way that I feel like it doesn't work is, well, one, they got a new owner, so maybe he wants to make a splash, but he kind of already did with Corbin Burns. They had the injury, so they do kind of have an open spot. But if nobody in the clubhouse knows Trevor Bauer and nobody in management knows him and who he is as a person, that's the risk, the gamble that they might not want to take, especially with so many young players in there. Now, if somebody did and they're like, oh, he would actually be a great influence on some of the young pitchers, this would be great. But I don't know if all the pieces line up that they would be willing to give him a chance. Again, I think it would have to be a combo of, like, yeah, maybe there's some young talent there that maybe they are not ready for superstardom yet, so it could buy you a year or maybe two. But you have to have, like, the clubhouse leaders there that have been there, done that, maybe even a little bit older than Trevor Bauer. So, like if Yadi Molina was still playing, or if, a couple of years ago, if he was like 35 and you're like, oh, he's got a couple more years left, then that's probably like the situation that you could do it with.
Those types of things, I think those are teams that would make sense to me. But again, I'm just looking. I don't care. I'll play for whatever team. I just want an opportunity to go play and do what I love to do and prove that I've been able to learn from, past mistakes. I think that's an important message to deliver to the youth too. Like, everyone's going to mess up, some more publicly than others, but if you learn from your mistakes, if you take accountability for where you went wrong, and you can be better. There can be that redemption.
You know what you just remind me of? You just remind me of something. When some of the players or owners say things like, I saw an interview you did with a couple guys 3 weeks ago. I don't know who the two guys were, but they did a very good job interviewing you. They looked like they were twins. Were they brothers? Were they related or no? They're just...
that WFAN?
I don't know which one it was, but they did a very good job interviewing you. And, the question was, well, the guy says, I have a daughter, so does he. Is that the same group?
Yeah.
I have a daughter, so does he. So what do we do? What do we explain to our daughters? And what do we explain to this? And Tom's got daughters, 2 of them. I got 2 daughters, and I got 2 boys. So how dare you talk to somebody like that? What kind of an example is he for a man? And da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so I don't know if...
This is maturity coming right here.
People who are the owners who ask the question about daughters. Let's overcome that objection together. Yesterday, we're having lunch with Will Guidara, author of Unreasonable Hospitality, who, you have to read this book, but we're having this conversation. Will's a freaking fantastic guy. He ran 11 Madison, #1 restaurant in the world, stud, great operator, sold it. He no longer owns it, and he no longer makes any decisions with the restaurant. The menu changes. I want to make sure I explain that. He hasn't done that since he sold it, which was a few years ago. So the new menu is not his new menu. It's the new person's menu. I asked the question, what movie have you ever watched back to back? Okay. And they're like, what do you mean? Have you ever watched the
He's gone off on a tangent.
What do you mean? You watch it for 2 hours, finish it, you watch it again. Okay. No, I've never done that. Okay. Eric says he watched John Wick back to back, but it's just kind of playing in the background while he's working, right? Mm-hmm. I said, the only movie I've watched back to back is Judge. With, you ever seen The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall?
I've never seen it.
Highly recommend you go watch it. Okay. By yourself. Nobody around. Just sit there and watch them. Even on the flight back, watch the movie. I guarantee you're going to get emotional. I guarantee you're going to get emotional. Because the premise of the movie is that Robert Duvall is the father of Robert Downey Jr. They're living in a small town. The father is the judge, okay? And, a kid in school, his son, does something real stupid, his son. And he puts him in jail, I think. Something like that, where he wasn't forgiving him. He was very, very tough on his son, Robert Downey Jr., who got into a car accident with his brother that was supposed to go be a Major League Baseball player, pitcher, gets injured, and he finishes his brother's career. He was that good of a pitcher, right? He was going to make it to the next level. It's just the best fight scenes with a father and a son.
I got to watch this now.
The judge, Duvall, with another kid who did some stupid, he decides to be lenient with the second guy because he feels guilty that he put his son in jail. And to the second guy, what does he do? He doesn't put him. He releases him and gives him a little bit more freedom. That guy ends up going in, killing a couple people and actually committing a crime, okay? And then eventually, later on, the judge does something, gets accused of driving and killing that guy that got out of jail, okay? Whether it's true or not, you have to watch the movie to see what happens at the end. And guess who ends up representing the father? The son. Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
And they have this best scene, the best fight scene. It's like, why couldn't you just love me? Do you know I finished #1 in my class? Fuck you, Dad. But like that. Like, it's awesome, right?
Wow.
To the people who say, I have a daughter, and how do I explain this to them? Watch this
Now bringing it in.
because
I
we've
think.
all been in
And like,
one of the
and the point,
situations where
get
we
to it.
made a stupid decision, or someone in our families made a stupid decision, and we wish somebody would have grace with them. Whether it's our kid, whether it's us, whether it's our parents, whether it's our siblings, and we know these people are good people, and sometimes we just deserve grace, right? So this whole concept about, well, how do I explain it to my daughter? You're assuming your daughter's going to walk on water for the rest of her life. You're assuming you walk on water. You're assuming your kids walk on water. None of us do. At some point, what our kids are going to want to see is the level of grace we're going to have. And grace doesn't just apply to kids that we have. Grace applies to people we work with as well. There's a lot of people that need a second chance in their lives. And I just feel a guy like you who potentially could end up losing $350 million plus if you never play ever again. I think the league would miss out on having a guy like you play. I think the fans would lose. I think you would lose the opportunity of being a great testimony in the future for other kids that are acting stupid for you to go and give them counsel and give them feedback. Because someone has to have a big call like yours to be able to have a better testimony. Because
that's the element of this that I love
to influence younger
in this
guys
interview.
Even they don't have.
Yep.
Because they've not gone through what you've gone through. Yours was more public. So you could come out and be like, listen, guys, here's all I'll tell you. Watch out for this. Don't do this. You're going to want to do this. Don't fall for this. They're going to say this. Don't fall for da-da-da-da-da. Focus on this, da-da-da. And it's like, okay, shit, who else is going to be better than this guy? This guy lost $100 million over 3 years. He came back and played. Yeah, he finished his career, won a World Series, won a Cy Young again, and redeemed himself and one of the greatest stories of all time in the history of sports. Awesome. But he's right. I'm going to listen to him. That's the part for me where, you know, even who was the coach in
Absolutely
NFL
love that.
He would always give people second chances, and they won 3 Super Bowls. And one of them was with Switzer, but it was really his team. Who was that? Jimmy Johnson. What did Jimmy Johnson get into? Hall of Fame. You ever seen Jimmy Johnson get into
Like
the Hall of Fame?
Belichick did that some too.
Surprised how he reacts. I don't know if you saw that video or not. No. Have you seen when Jimmy Johnson, they come up to him, they said, you going into the Hall of Fame? I don't know if we can play it because the YouTube's not going to let us play it because somebody else owns it. So don't show it in the screen. But they come up to Jimmy Johnson, and he has no clue. It's in the middle of a show, and they say, Jimmy, I'm here to tell you, you're inducted. You could put surprise. You're inducted to the Hall of Fame. You should see how he cries. You should see how he cries. You should see how he's loved.
I think I've seen that video.
Dude, it's awesome,
yeah.
right? This is it. It's right here. Don't play it in the back, but this is it. This is the clip. And they're telling, look at he's shaking, right? He's shaking. Just focus on his body. Look at him. He doesn't even, what is he thinking about right there? All those years, Jerry Jones firing him, you know, you didn't do it. You did this. You look at this. It's pure celebrating. It's pure joy. This man who's in his 60s is.
I know we don't have much left, and he is kind of going on a little tangent there. But I love what he said about like the story and basically being not like a martyr, but like he's an example. He'd be an example for those guys coming up. You know, and everyone when you're younger, we all feel like we're like Teflon, like nothing's gonna get us, no one's gonna outsmart us, blah blah blah. Well, anybody can get conned, anybody can get got, anybody can make a mistake, anybody can, you know, try to make the right decision when there is no right decision. And it could backfire and cost you everything, like it has with Trevor Bauer. Well, what is the ownership or the presidents or whatever? What kind of example are they setting to say, oh, well, even though you weren't charged with anything, you were surrounded with controversy and you were a little immature, a little outspoken, even though he's a young young adult, I guess, to say when you're kind of in your 20s still. Is that not kind of like athletes are being thrown into the spotlight as super? Like, how many stars we got in the game that come up to the major leagues that are in the game right now that are like 20, 21, 22, and you're expecting them to have everything figured out and be the starting star example to all these kids? Like, no. Like, you need to have people in there that have made mistakes, have learned from them, can teach others how to handle it or handle the stress and not ruin their lives over it, or try to like withdraw and go into depression or alcoholism or all these other outlets that you could fall into. You need to have some examples and standards like this that your Trevor Bauers can say like, hey, even though all this stuff did happen and I learned from it, I was then given a second chance and I didn't mess it up. I took advantage of it. I taught others, better ways to pitch. I utilized everything I could within the organization, which led me to, get a decent salary. I therefore opened up a charity because that team, gave me a chance. So I want to give back to my community. Like, there's a lot of good stuff that could come from this. I feel like they're only missing out on that the first couple of months, maybe the first year of possibly negative, PR stuff or whatever. But after that first year, after this stuff is forgotten about, it's all going to be benefits. It's all going to be good. I mean, maybe not everything. Everyone's, might have a setback. He might have do something stupid when he gets frustrated, like when he threw the ball at the center field or whatever. But like, nobody's perfect. We all do dumb things. The only difference is we're not on TV or we're not being, a camera in our face, social media plastered everywhere. Like, we're not on everybody's TV. We do it with nobody watching so we can get away with it.
Is officially 14 years old for this 90 seconds. We all relate to this. He made mistakes. He gave players in the NFL second chances. He gave NFL players that screwed up second chances. They love him like a father. Look at Troy Aikman. They love this man like a father. Like a father. I think the MLB has a chance to do that with you. And I hope they do. I hope they give you a second chance. I can't wait to be at that game. If they give it to you, I can't wait to talk to you about it that night when it happens. I'm like, how you feeling, man? What's the word? What are you thinking about it? I think it'll be
that would be such a redemption journey too, if you could like record that and turn that into a show as well.
That can show redemption and a second chance to other kids who have screwed up, who are about to go pick up drugs and cocaine and alcohol because they've given up on life. I think the MLB can inspire that 14-year-old kid, that 16-year-old kid to say, continue going on. Larry Bird, his father shot himself because he owed so much money to the community. He was a gambler and he was an alcoholic.
This story's crazy.
3 brothers. And Larry gave up on life. And a guy gave him another chance and said, come back and do something. He became one of the greatest players of all time. It's an awesome story. How many people relate to a guy like that could be a drug addict, drug dealer, ruin his life because of his father committing suicide? What a great story Larry Bird is to those people. I think
that makes me want to know more about Larry Bird and his life.
If they hear this message, I hope they give you that shot because I think it'll make for a great story. So
yeah, I think so too. I hope so.
Any final thoughts, Tom, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think America needs to understand exactly what you just said. I'm only the man I am and the dad I am because I've taken the mistakes I made in life and I've turned that into a body of knowledge called experience. And I can bring that to my daughter with authenticity. And I think
God, he words that so well.
Is what America needs. I think it would turn down some of the tension that we have overall. But I think that is something that I think all sports fans remember. And baseball is a symbol of redemption. I can strike out 3 times, but they still want me in the bottom of the 9th inning because I'm still capable. And I think the sport of baseball,
that's what I love about baseball.
Nature is redemption. And I think we need to remember none of us are perfect, and we're the people we are because of what we do with our mistakes. And it's a symbol of the fabric of America. And I think you summed it up perfectly.
Yeah.
I think baseball can use Trevor Bauer to make baseball better.
That's a goal of mine. I've always wanted to make the game better, leave it in a better spot than I found it. I think I've accomplished a small part of that on the training side, but I've, you talk about decade runs, I have another decade run in me to help in a lot of other ways. I'd love the opportunity to be able to do that.
Can't wait for that day. I remember when we got the call when I was in Bermuda, and the lawyer said, "Pat, you're officially a minority owner of the Yankees." It was a dream. I couldn't believe what happened. And my son was watching. The only documentary Dylan ever cried in was the documentary of Yogi Berra. You ever watched it?
Mm-hmm.
I had to go watch it again. I had to go watch it immediately. I'm like, what happened to this documentary? Like, what a freaking story. Even Yogi's a story where they eventually had to make up, him and Steinbrenner not coming back to the game. But yeah, so if a guy like me can go from where I was at, and some of you don't know my background, who I was, what I did, to where I'm at right now, that's why I love baseball. Baseball is a spiritual game. It's a very unique game, very, very unique game. And I think baseball's got a big chance here to do something big. Anyways, Trevor, it's great to finally have this conversation with you.
Yep.
This was a blast. I'm looking forward to see what happens there. I hope the right people see this content and they make the decision for themselves. But future looks bright, regardless of what happens. Whether it's this or something else, I'd love to see this be the part, but I think you're going to do fine for the rest of your life. But selfishly, I'd love to see you have a redemption story and play in the major leagues.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
Gang,
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, if you also feel this way, and you got guys in Major League Baseball or people that are influencers, share this with them. Go to a certain minute and say, watch it from here to here, or watch it from here to there. And if you like to see make it in major leagues and you're like, I don't know anybody in baseball, just share it with everybody. Have them watch this story, because it's a story of redemption. A person that was accused for something he didn't do and cost him the love of the game that he couldn't play at the highest level that he wanted to play. And I don't think that's fair. So I think he deserves a second chance. God bless everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So, as he said with like the influencer thing, I don't think I'm a major influencer or anything like that, but that was kind of one of the reasons when I was like, this is like a subject that I've had interest in. I've followed for the years that it's happened. I wanted to know how it ended up. But I think there's a lot of people too that, like, with all the stuff in the world going on and waves of knowledge and information and stuff, I think that's something that people have forgotten about. So I wanted to bring it back up. And even if it is just like one person watching the video or two people and they're like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh, I thought he was guilty. Like, maybe me doing this and showing it's a one person, two person, well, then they have a discussion with somebody and that leads to a discussion with several somebodies. Like, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. Kind of with the series in general, but just like, I want to get the ball rolling on discussions that is not just simple. I mean, some of the stuff I don't mind if it's silly or whatever, but I would hope it would have a little bit more meaning,